in this ninja world. I'm the one in charge now. Uzumaki Naraku. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. Whirlpool. Naraku. Konoha 48 years, Z. Chao, Yin, Mao, Chen, In. A house in Konoha village. A young body and hands are constantly changing, and he is working hard to practice the seals. Uzumaki Naraku's childish face was full of determination. Naraku, take a rest. It's time to eat soon. A gentle female voice came point. As soon as he finished speaking, Uzumaki Kushina, who had long red hair and a gentle smile on her face, stood in front of him. Okay. Naraku nodded and stopped what he was doing point, but just when his eyes fell on Kushina's bulging belly, a trace of anxiety flashed across his face. She's almost born. Naraku was originally an outstanding workman in the 21st century. He was working on screwing from 8 to 8, 9 to 10 in the evening every day. But one day on the way to get off work, he was very lucky to have a car accident, and then he fell into a rage on the spot point. He originally thought he was dead, but when he opened his eyes, he came to the world of Naruto, and inexplicably became Kushina's younger brother and Minato's brother-in-law. Now it is the 5th year since he came to the world of Naruto, and he happens to be 5 years old. Point. After briefly washing up, Naraku came to the dining table, where food was already placed. Point. Swish. Suddenly, the space in front of Naraku fluctuated, and then a yellow figure appeared here. Point. With dazzling blonde hair and blue eyes, the visitor showed a gentle smile to Naraku. Naraku, the person who came, was none other than Naruto's father, Kushina's man, known as the fastest man in the ninja world, Namake's Minato. Minato-san. Naraku seemed to be in a bad mood, and when he saw Minato, he just nodded and shouted. Like the original work, Minato succeeded the Hokage a year ago, and became the 4th Hokage. Although the Hokage's affairs are relatively busy, Minato will often go home and have dinner with them. After all, he can come and go freely with the Flying Thunder God. Especially recently, maybe because Kushina is approaching the period of pregnancy, he has been spending more and more time at home. Naraku's mood became very bad when he thought of this, and his little face was also full of worry. In fact, he knew that he and Kushina were not real siblings because of the age gap between the two. Kushina came to Konoha when she was 6 or 7 years old. Point. Regarding his life experience, neither Minato nor Kushina told him, but his red hair proved that he was indeed a member of the Uzumaki clan. Point. However, Naraku himself had some conjectures about this aspect, but because he was not a character in the original work, he could not think of anything. He just suspected that he might be related to Uchiha. Point. In his memory, when he was 1 or 2 years old, Uchiha Fugaku secretly visited him several times. It almost made him think that he and Itachi were going to become half-brothers. Of course, this was just his suspicion, and he had no evidence. Point. Although they were not biological siblings, the two of them felt for him as if they were real relatives, especially Kushina. Even if she married Minato, she still took him with her. So for Naraku, the two of them have long been the closest people to him. Because of this, his mood has been getting worse and worse recently. Knowing the plot of the original novel, he knows that once Naruto is born in Kushina's belly, it means that Minato and Kushina's death has come. I'm done eating. After eating, Naraku left here and continued to practice the seals in the yard. Point. It's not that he doesn't want to practice other ninjutsu, it's just that Minato and Kushina don't teach him. Although he has asked the two of them to teach him how to practice many times, they have always refused because he was too young. Point. Naraku felt quite speechless for this reason. He really wanted to say to Minato, your disciple Kakashi graduated from the ninja school at the age of 5. Why don't you say he is young? But he was just thinking about it in his mind. Naraku can still understand that they don't teach him how to practice. The 3rd ninja war has just ended, and the entire ninja world is in a period of peace, so there is no need for children like Naraku to go to the battlefield. The same peacetime ninja psychologist's entry age has also been adjusted. Minato and Kushina's plan was to wait until he could go to the ninja academy to start training. Although he has reached the age now, the opening season of the ninja academy has not yet arrived, and he will have to wait for more than a month. As a result, he can only do some simple physical training and seal exercises now. Naruto will be born in less than a month. No, I have to find a way to do something, Naraku thought to himself. At this time, he felt helpless, just like how he couldn't change his life by tightening screws in a factory in his previous life. Why? Is there something wrong with Naraku recently? Kushina looked worried at the dinner table. Minato on the side also noticed Naraku's abnormality, but in order not to worry Kushina, he still smiled and said, "It's okay Kushina, maybe he just wants to learn ninjutsu." Minato also cared about Naraku very much, even though he had strongly opposed his marriage to Kushina. Thinking of this, Minato seemed to think of something. He carefully recalled Naraku's recent changes, which seemed to have started after he and Kushina got married, especially after learning that Kushina was pregnant. Based on Minato's understanding of Naraku, he would naturally not think that he was depressed all day long because he was worried about falling out of favor. Naraku had always behaved very maturely in his eyes, but he had never regarded his brother-in-law as a real child. Normally, he would only show his childish nature in front of Kushina. I have to find time to talk to him. Minato, who was thinking in his mind, suddenly glanced towards the window. With long silver white hair, a black mask, and a Konoha forehead protector covering his left eye. He is the Kakashi Hatake who graduated from the ninja school at the age of 5 according to Naraku. Normally, as a member of the Anbu, he would wear a mask when going out, but it was the Minato house that he came to, so he took off the mask in advance. When Kakashi first arrived, he saw Naraku frowning in the yard. He quickly stepped forward and rubbed the red hair twice. Naraku was naturally extremely reluctant to do this, but at just 5 years old, he naturally had no ability to resist in front of a genius like Kakashi. Naraku is very familiar with Kakashi. He liked this character very much in his previous life, and coupled with Minato's relationship, they have known each other for a long time. "Kakashi, you're here." Minato's voice came over at this time, and he and Kushina walked over together. "Teacher, master," Kakashi shouted respectfully. Afterwards, a few people chatted briefly. After Minato learned that the third generation was looking for him, he directly used the flying thunder god to leave here. "It seems that we are already discussing the birth of my sister." Naraku guessed this after hearing that the third generation was looking for Minato. Although Minato is the current Hokage of Konoha, because he has only just taken office and lacking experience, the third generation will still intervene in many things, not to mention the birth of a Jinchuriki, which is the top priority of the village. Chapter 2 Brother Minato, do you believe in rebirth? The night was as dark as ink, and Minato had just returned home from his discussion with Sandai and the others. At this time, a hint of fatigue flashed in his eyes, and there was also a hint of helplessness that was not easily noticeable. He didn't expect that the third generation would also invite Danzo and 2 other advisors here today. Although he is now the current Hokage of Konoha, he is still restricted in many things, especially Danzo, who actually proposed to use the roots as the place for Kushina to give birth. Even Minato's expression changed when he thought of this. He knew better than anyone where the root was. If Kushina really went there, she might never get out again. Naturally, he would not agree to this unreasonable request. Finally, at the third generation's suggestion, the delivery location was temporarily set at a secret location outside Konoha village, and Anbu had been sent there in advance to prepare. When Minato returned home, he did not enter the bedroom directly, but walked to another room in the yard. At this time, Naraku, who was lying on the bed, seemed to notice something, and suddenly opened his eyes. Then he stood up and opened the door to the room, and a handsome figure stood at the door under the moonlight. It was Minato. "Naraku." Minato's gentle voice came. The 2 of them had a tacit understanding and were not surprised by each other's appearance. Then the 2 walked into the room together and looked at each other in front of a small table. At this time, outside the room, there was an unknown spell flickering. The Isolation formation has been activated. Minato's expression became solemn as he noticed the abnormality. It is not difficult for the Uzumaki clan who are proficient in sealing techniques to master this formation. Of course, this formation was arranged by Kushina in advance, and Naraku only needs to control it. Regarding the sealing technique, Kushina gave it to Naraku without hesitation, but because he has not refined chakra yet, he has not actually used it. Brother Minato, do you believe in rebirth? Minato, who had already adjusted his mentality, was instantly shocked when he heard these words, with an incredible expression on his face. But after all, he was the shadow of a village, so he calmed down quickly. If I remember correctly, you should have performed a mission about Laolan, where you should have met the future Naruto, Naraku said again without giving him much time to prepare. He was betting that Minato didn't seal that memory of him. Before this conversation, Naraku thought about it for a long time and finally revealed some things to Minato. After all, he was too weak now. Even if he was familiar with the plot, he had no ability to change anything. So he found for himself the identity of a reborn person. Minato, who had just calmed down, could no longer remain calm after hearing these words. His originally gentle face was now full of majesty, and he looked at Naraku with a scrutinizing gaze. At this time, he was filled with doubts. How could he know this? Naraku's guess was not wrong. He did keep the memory about Laolan for himself, but he was the only one who knew about it, and even Kushina didn't tell it. Although he was confused, he did not speak. He knew that Naraku must have something to say. Minato's performance made Naraku feel relieved. It seems the bet was successful. Regarding this matter, Naraku also got clues from a kind of sealing technique that seals memories. Although that kind of sealing technique can seal memories, it can only seal the memories of others. That was the only sealing technique recorded by the Uzumaki clan that could seal memories, so he guessed that Minato should still retain memories of future Naruto. On the day my sister gave birth, a man named Uchiha Madara would appear. He took advantage of the weakening of the seal after the birth, and released the Kyuubi, and in order to protect the village, you and your sister died under the claws of the Nine Tails. Before you died, you used the Gaul seal to seal the Nine Tails into the newborn Naruto. And I was caught at the root by Denzo, and he placed a seal and controlled me for many years. It wasn't until many years later that I had a lucky escape from there. Except for things about himself, Naraku told everything else according to the original plot, just to make Minato believe it all. Kyuubi, Uchiha Madara, and Anzo. Minato didn't show any surprise when he heard that he died in battle. In fact, when he saw Naruto at Laolan's place, he recognized him as his son at first sight, and from the fact that Naruto didn't know him, he also guessed something, but he didn't want to ruin the future development, so he has always concealed this matter. But it's different now. If it was just him who died, he could still accept it reluctantly, but now that he learned that Kushina died in the battle and Naraku was captured by Denzo, his face gradually became ugly. At this time, he had completely believed Naraku's words. Not to mention knowing about his encounter with future Naruto, he had only learned the sealing technique of Gaul sealing not long ago, and he hadn't even had time to tell Kushina. More importantly, what Naraku just said was the worst plan in his heart, but he wanted to die alone and let Kushina live with Naraku and Naruto. Uchiha Madara, wasn't he killed by the First Lord a long time ago? Minato asked after calming down a little. Naraku shook his head. I'm not sure about this. My memory when I was reborn was not complete. It's also possible that my future self didn't investigate the truth of the matter, although he knew that the so-called Madara was just a Bito in disguise. He didn't plan to tell Minato this now, otherwise it would be a lot of trouble to explain. And another thing is that he doesn't want to reveal too much about the future. Just like Minato is worried about, the future is full of unknowns. If there are too many changes, then he who is familiar with the plot will lose a lot of advantages, but some things still have to be done. Seeing Naraku shaking his head, Minato fell into deep thought. Although he didn't know much about legendary figures like Uchiha Madara, he had heard many legends about him. That was the ninja Shura who could stand alongside the god of ninja. The room fell silent for a moment as Minato digested what Naraku just said in his mind. And Naraku didn't say anything else. Because he was too young, there was only this he could do. He had tried to prevent Kushina and Minato's marriage before, but failed in the end. They may not have noticed that a figure appeared outside the room at this time. Boom. Boom. There was a knock on the door, followed closely by Kushina's voice. "Naraku, are you still awake? Come out and chat with your sister." Kushina, who had been worried about Naraku, didn't fall asleep either. "Brother Minato, let's go out." Naraku's voice sounded. "Okay, just." As he finished speaking, Minato had stood up. A gentle smile appeared on his face again. Then Naraku also opened the door to the room, and the three of them chatted in this room until midnight. A long-lost smile appeared on Naraku's face. "We must protect these," Minato and Naraku thought in their hearts at the same time. Chapter 3 Naraku's Talent. In the early morning, the sky just turned white, and the sun slowly rose from the east. Naraku walked into the courtyard wearing a black training uniform, holding a scroll in his hand. "This is the way to refine chakra," Naraku murmured. The scroll was taught to him by Minato yesterday, and there was also other information, but it was just not something he could use now. "If I had known this, I would have had a showdown with him earlier," he thought to himself. Then his attention was focused on the scroll. This contains some information about chakra. Chakra is a kind of energy produced after the human body masters the fusion of energy from various parts. It is used to perform ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu, or to bind opponents in the form of threads, or to cut off the energy source of materials that are also composed of chakra. It generally refers to the product of an equal mixture of mental energy and physical energy. The physical energy produced by the 130 trillion cells in the body, as well as the spiritual energy inherent in each person, are combined to form chakra. After the ninja extracts chakra from the body, he forms ninjutsu by combining it with specific seals. According to this logic, everyone has spiritual energy and physical energy in their body, but some people cannot combine the two together. Such people are destined to be unable to become ninjas. Naraku noticed that at the end of the scroll there was also a diagram of the movement of chakra on the human body. Putting away the scroll, Naraku already had a preliminary understanding of chakra. He closed his eyes and began to carefully feel the physical and mental energy in his body. After all, he is a member of the Uzumaki clan, and his natural chakra is strong. Just 10 minutes later, he sensed the body energy hidden in his cells. The subsequent mental energy was not difficult for him. With his eyes closed, Naraku could clearly feel the two energies in his body. Suddenly, he frowned slightly. Under his perception, he found that mental energy was much stronger than physical energy, but then he figured out that he had traveled through time after all. Although he had the body of a 5-year-old, he had the soul of an adult. Spiritual energy should be closely related to the soul, Naraku thought in his heart. It seems that I'm still a genius. The next step is to integrate mental energy and physical energy. Cool. With a soft breath, Naraku's attention became more concentrated. According to the special guidance method, he first mobilized a certain degree of physical energy, and then began to mobilize a similar amount of spiritual energy. When the ratio of the two energies was about the same, he started manipulating them to merge with each other. Soon, after the fusion was successful, a brand new light blue energy appeared in his hand. Seeing this scene, Naraku smiled, and his closed eyes suddenly opened. It seems it was successful. But just when he wanted to take a closer look at the blue energy in his hand, the energy quickly disappeared. Forehead. Naraku smiled awkwardly. He knew this was because there was too little chakra. After all, the physical energy just fused was less than 1%, and as for the spiritual energy, it was less than 1,000th. Naraku was not discouraged. Since the first time had been completed, all that was left was just a drop of water, and all that was needed was time. He then closed his eyes and continued refining chakra. Squeak. It wasn't until Minato opened the door and walked into the yard that he opened his eyes and blue energy flashed through him. "You are refining chakra," Minato noticed, even though it was only for a moment. A trace of surprise appeared on his face, but he was relieved when he thought that Naraku was from the Uzumaki clan known for its chakra capacity. As for Naraku's identity as the reborn person, he automatically ignored it. There were too many unclear things in it, and Minato didn't delve into it. In his eyes, Naraku was still their younger brother. Otherwise, the fact that the reborn person does not know how to refine chakra and use ninjutsu would be enough to make people delve deeper. It seems that our Naraku is still a genius, Minato said with a smile. Genius, for sure. He is my Kushina's younger brother. Kushina's voice came over before Naraku could reply. Afterwards, the three of them had a hearty breakfast together, and Minato left the place in a flash as usual. Kakashi's figure also appeared in the yard on time. His task was to protect Kushina's safety when Minato was not at home. Hey, brother K is here. Naraku was in a good mood today because he successfully refined chakra and teased Kakashi. Kakashi rolled his eyes helplessly. He was really confused about the title K-Gen. Although he didn't want to accept it, Naraku had been calling him for several years, so he gradually got used to it. Maybe it's because Kakashi often comes to Minato's house, and because of Naraku's intentional or unintentional contact, his character is now much better than in the original work. Although he is still silent most of the time, he will occasionally change his expression. It could also be because Minato and Kushina were still alive. Minato on the other side did not go to the Hokage's office as usual, but appeared outside Konoha village, closing his eyes and sensing something carefully. Now that he got the news from Naraku, he naturally would not sit still and wait for death. He must go all out to protect his relatives. Sure enough, I still can't sense it. A trace of disappointment flashed across Minato's face, but the next moment a confident smile reappeared on his face. He formed seals with his hands, and with a bang, a burst of white smoke appeared, and his figure disappeared from the place. It wasn't until the sky was getting dark and the sun had completely set that his figure reappeared here. That should be enough. He smiled gently, and then the space fluctuated, and his figure disappeared again. Brother K, if you lose, don't forget the ninjutsu you promised to teach me. Naraku looked at Kakashi in front of him with a smile. Yes, Kakashi, you lost. Kushina on the side also showed a happy smile. Only Kakashi looked at Naraku, who was covered in blue energy, with a shock expression hidden under the mask. At this time, Naraku was not only covered with chakra, but he was also standing on a pool filled with water. Yes, he had now completed treading water. The Uzumaki clan is so perverted, Kakashi couldn't help complaining in his heart. Although he could do these things at the same age, it would only take several days of practice, but this guy completed the 2 projects of climbing trees and treading water in 1 day. Although he was reluctant to admit it, Kakashi felt that Naraku's training talent might be even higher than his own. Then he was willing to admit defeat and handed Naraku a scroll. Chapter 4. The 3 ninjas gather together. 3 days later, 2 figures appeared outside Konoha village, wearing a tea green gown and soft blonde hair. She is mature and charming, and her pear-shaped figure looks very attractive, especially the pair of huge objects on her chest that make it difficult to take your eyes away. Just like the man next to him with flowing white hair, 2 streaks of red oil paint on his face, and a forehead protector with the word oil engraved on his head. At this time, he was staring at something carefully, and the expression on his face was a little obscene. Jiraiya, you bastard. Tsunade, who noticed Jiraiya's gaze, roared and punched him directly. The wind of the fist shook the air, and with a bang, the opponent was blasted 10 meters away. Yes, these 2 people are Senju Tsunade, known as one of the 3 ninjas, and the mad ghost Jiraiya. Well, Tsunade, you are still so cruel. Jiraiya walked over, rubbing his butt. Although he was complaining, his face was full of smiles. HMPH, you are as perverted as ever. Tsunade snorted. Looking at the familiar Konoha in front of her, a flash of reminiscence flashed through Tsunade's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a touch of sadness. Konoha was founded by her grandfather, and the people closest to her died in the war to protect Konoha. This is why she no longer wants to stay in Konoha. While it brought her joy, it also cost her too much. However, Konoha is still her home, and no matter what, she will not allow others to harm this home. This is why she directly agreed to Jiraiya's request. After he found her, Uchiha Madara, this guy is really not dead. In order not to alert others, she and Jiraiya quietly sneaked into Konoha. Only a few high-level officials in Konoha and the Minato family knew about their return. In a hidden corner of Konoha village, a tall figure appeared here with flowing white hair and a resolute face. It was none other than Jiraiya Point. After coming out of Minato's house, he came here. Point rumble. As the sound rang out, a wall of earth slowly rose up in front of him. Sure enough, you discovered it, Orochimaru. Looking at the figure that appeared in front of him, a smile appeared on Jiraiya's face. With long black hair, a pale face, and narrow eyes exuding a cold aura, he was none other than the last Sannin, Cold Lord Orochimaru. Although he had sensed Jiraiya's aura, Orochimaru was still a little surprised when he actually saw him in person. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. At this time, he had not yet defected to the village, and his bond with Jiraiya was still very deep. Let's go, Orochimaru. Tsunade is waiting for us. Jiraiya waved to him, then turned and left. Is Tsunade back too? He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, stepped forward, and followed Jiraiya. It looks like something interesting is going to happen in Konoha. Haha, the former residence of the Thousand Hands clan, the place that has been vacant all year round, welcomed 3 familiar people today. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru. The 3 of them had a long-awaited gathering here today, in Minato's house. I didn't expect Minato-san to call Tsunade back. Naraku was somewhat surprised. Originally, he thought that Minato would just call Jiraiya back, but Tsunade's return was a good thing. However, Naraku remembered that Tsunade during this period seemed to be suffering from hemophobia. He shook his head slightly. After all, he was one of the 3 ninjas. Even if he suffered from hemophobia, he still had good combat power, not to mention the medical ninjutsu that was the best in the ninja world. With these, we should be able to stop Obito, Naraku thought to himself. But for some reason, he still felt a little panicked. Have you been noticed yet? Naraku thought of Zetsu, who was a member of the Akatsuki organization who specialized in collecting intelligence. Because of his special concealment ability in clones, he can easily detect the confidential information of the 5 major countries. Although the news of Jiraiya and Tsunade's return to the village was not made public, Naraku felt that he couldn't hide it from him. Naraku was thinking at this moment that it would be best if Obito gave up his plan. After learning the news, after giving up this plan, they will naturally stop for a long time, and at most they will only do some small actions in secret, but these are not important anymore. Time, what Naraku lacks most now is time. He is confident that, as long as he is given a certain amount of time to grow up, then whether it is Obito or the Black Zetsu hidden in the deepest place, they will not be a big trouble. Of course, he is not so conceited as to face all this alone. There are still many geniuses in Konoha. To deal with Obito, who possesses the time and space pupil technique, Kakashi is the best candidate. Point and Akehyang, both of them are the strongest teammates, not to mention the geniuses of the Uchiha clan. In Naraku's view, if Konoha did not have that series of accidents, there would be no problem in resisting the entire Akatsuki organization even with the power of just 1 village. It's too early to think about these things now, Naraku said with a wry smile, then threw these things out of his mind and started practicing again. He quickly formed seals with his hands, and blue chakra also emerged from his body. Wind escape, sword of wind, a long sword made of air was held in his hand. In a dense forest within the kingdom of fire, there are many natural caves deep in the dense forest. Deep in the cave, a man dressed in loose black clothes and a tiger-striped one-eyed mask is sitting cross-legged on a huge rock. Point suddenly, on the wall beside him, a figure wrapped in a giant pitcher plant appeared. I just got the news that both Jiraiya and Tsunade suddenly returned to Konoha village. Hearing this, the scarlet Muzi hidden under the mask trembled slightly. This is not good news. Zetsu, these 2 people are Uchiha. Obito and Zetsu. Jiraiya just left the wood industry not long ago, and Tsunade has been traveling for a long time. How could these 2 people suddenly return to the village? Obito was very surprised, and his only exposed eye narrowed slightly. Could it be that the 4th generation and others are aware of our plan? It shouldn't be possible. Obito shook his head. In the current ninja world, except for that person, no one should know his existence, let alone his plan. Could it be that you were discovered when you went to Konoha a few days ago? On the wall, Ju's half black half white body was shrouded in pitcher plants, which looked quite strange. Obito glanced at him sideways and pondered slightly. He went to Konoha that day just to visit Lin. He had no contact with anyone in the village who had the ability to discover him. Could it be Kakashi? Obito murmured in his mouth, thinking of the silver-haired guy talking to himself in front of Lin's grave. Chapter 5 Obito's Plan. Impossible. Obito shook his head slightly. Although Kakashi also opened the Manjaki Sharingan like him, he was not from the Uchiha clan after all. He should not have fully mastered the divine power yet, so it was impossible to discover him. He raised his eyes and looked at Judeo in front of him. It's probably just a coincidence. They can't know our plan. And didn't you say that apart from the return of Tsunade and Jiraiya, Konoha has no other actions? Maybe, Ju asked. Will the plan continue to be implemented? The plan must continue. If this opportunity is missed, it will be difficult to start the subsequent work. In the cave shrouded in darkness, Obito stared at the palm of his right hand that was slowly clenched. However, at this time, Ju changed his usual cheerfulness and looked a little heavy. Only you say, even if you successfully release the Nine Tails and hold back the fourth Hokage with the power of Jiraiya and the third Hokage, it is still difficult for the plan to succeed. After all, although Kyuubi is very strong, it still can't gain the upper hand against several cage level players at the same time. Hearing this, Obito looked heavy, as if he was thinking about something. Otherwise, if we call that guy together, he should be able to use part of his power. After pondering for a while, Obito said, ignore him for the time being. Although the death of his companions has caused a huge blow to him, there is only 1 month left. It would be okay if he only attacks Konoha, but now Jiraiya is back. Yes, he is Jiraiya's disciple after all, and he can't be fully trusted now. What's more, that also means that we have exposed all our trump cards, which will also have an impact on future plans. However, Obito's eyes narrowed slightly, his scarlet eyes showing murderous intent. We can try to make them fight against each other. Did you think? Juwei was startled for a moment, then started laughing. Haha, it looks like it would be very interesting. Let's go. To be sure, we still need to prepare some things. As he spoke, the space in front of Obito fluctuated, and then his figure disappeared from the spot. A month later, Kirigakure, one of the 5 major villages, ushered in a big event. The sudden disappearance of the 4th Mizukage Gota Chibana Yagura plunged the Kirigakure village into panic. Some blood-step families began to become restless, among which the Kaguya family was the most obvious. They started various small actions to prepare for a coup. For Konoha, or for the entire ninja world, today will be a special day. The true son of the prophecy, Uzumaki Naruto, will be born today. Konoha village, Minato's house. Naraku, wait for your sister at home. You will be back soon. Kushina rubbed Naraku's red hair and said gently, okay, I'm waiting for my sister and Naruto at home, Naraku said with the same smile on his face. Although he was very worried now, he didn't show it, because he was afraid that Kushina would be worried. For a woman, giving birth to a child is inherently risky, not to mention that she still has the Kyuubi sealed in her body. Regarding the fact that someone would attack, both Minato and he chose to hide it from Kushina in order to allow him to give birth safely. Don't worry, we will come back safely, Minato said with a smile, and then he put his 2 hands on Kushina's shoulders. After a space fluctuation, they disappeared on the spot. Will you really come back? A feeling of palpitations rose in Naraku's heart. Although Minato was already prepared, he had told him all the news, including Obito's time and space ninjutsu. He also reminded him Watergate Point, but even so, he still felt a little uneasy. Sister, you must come back. Naraku prayed silently in his heart. He really feels powerless now, but there is nothing he can do. At only 5 years old, there is really only so much he can do. Hokage's office. Although it is late at night, the lights here are still not turned off. An old man with some grey hair and a few clearly visible wrinkles on his face was holding a pipe in his hand. This man is the 3rd Hokage, a powerful ninja known as a ninja professor in the ninja world. Minato had to accompany Kushina throughout the birth, and the responsibility of protecting the village temporarily fell on him. Opposite him were also sitting 2 elderly people, a man and a woman, respectively Koharu and Mito Manabu. Duanzo, what are you thinking about? Looking at Danzo, who had not arrived for a long time, the third generation thought secretly in his heart, the night is dark. Inside a secret cave outside Konoha village, the dim light illuminated the entire cave. What the? Woman's cries of pain were heard from inside the cave, because she could not bear the severe pain. This is where Kushina gave birth. Her red hair, which was full of blood, became very messy. Because of her weakness, Kushina's face was pale at this time, and her hands were clenched into fists. She had never been in such pain, which made her feel exhausted and sweating non-stop. Runs down from the head. No matter how vicious women are, they are great at this moment, because they are giving birth to a new life. Come out quickly, Naruto. Mom can't bear it anymore. Minato, who was maintaining the nine-tail seal, thought to himself. He was also extremely nervous at this time. Seeing Kushina's painful look, he couldn't help but ask, is Kushina really okay like this? No problem. Every woman is strong in moments like this. You should concentrate on sealing the Kyuubi. Compared to his nervousness, Sarutobi Biwako, who was in charge of delivering the baby, seemed very calm. For her, who had already given birth to 2 children, this was just a small scene. Boom. At this time, under Minato's palm, the seal on Kushina's stomach that was about to collapse suddenly swelled, and a violent and bloody energy crazily impacted the seal, as if it would emerge in the next moment. Roar. A roar sounded in Minato's mind, and in a daze, he seemed to see a huge blood-red monster standing in front of him. Kyuubi, Minato exclaimed, is really a powerful force. But how could I let you succeed? Minato looked solemn, and began to mobilize all the chakra in his body, to suppress the rioting Kyuubi with all his strength. Come on, Kushina. Naruto. At this time, Minato was more nervous than ever before. He could no longer be distracted and think about other things. He had to go all out to suppress the Kyuubi. Outside the cave, several masked Anbu were carefully guarding the surroundings. There is a faint flash of black magic on the entire mountain, and the barrier wraps the mountain. The technique isolated everything in the cave, so it seemed very quiet outside. However, the appearance of a space vortex broke the existing calm. Chapter 6. Naruto is born, and Kushina is arrested. Outside Konoha village, as the space vortex appeared, Obito, dressed in black, also appeared. It's right here. I'm so sorry, teacher. Master, Obito murmured quietly as he walked forward. Aha. Just after taking a few steps forward, several figures appeared in front of him. Being able to be chosen to be the ones to guard Kushina's delivery. These Anbu are not weak in strength. No nonsense. These Anbu people chose to take action directly, waving the swords in their hands and slashing at Obito. Clang clang clang. Several Anbu equipped knives slashed from different directions and actually penetrated Obito's body directly, as if they were slashed directly in the air. When they collided with each other, they made the sound of golden un. What is this? Someone exclaimed, and at the same time, stepped back very quickly. However, some people were not so lucky. Obito quickly killed one person with a kunai in hand. The skull eyes under the tiger striped mask became brighter and brighter. Today, I, Obito Uchiha, will cut off the cause and effect. Then his figure moved quickly. Although the strength of these Anbu was good, they were not enough to face the powerful Obito. After only 10 seconds, all the Anbu fell in a pool of blood. Obito looked towards the cave. It's your turn to take action. In the cave, whoa, wow, a loud cry came, and when they heard the cry, Kushina, who was almost exhausted, and Minato, who was suppressing the nine-tailed seal, looked excited, leaving crystal tears at the same time. This newly born little life is the crystallization of their love and the continuation of their love. People who have never been a parent cannot understand this feeling. Wow. A cry was heard, and Sarutobi Biwako, who was responsible for delivering the baby, picked up the newborn Naruto. Like most children, the skin on his newborn body was a little dry, and his little body was trembling slightly. Minato, hurry up and perfect the seal of the Kyuubi. At this moment, another person on the field reminded him. This person looked like a woman with white hair. Although he wanted to hold his child, Minato knew that there were more important things to do right now. Kushina, please bear with it a little longer. It will be fine soon. Because of Naruto's birth, Kushina's original sealing technique was close to collapse and could no longer suppress the nine tails, so Minato could only rebuild a new sealing technique. although it was a bit troublesome. Luckily Minato was good at sealing, so he would be able to rearrange the seals in a short time. Wangxiang. Xianain. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly appeared on the field point, then a shocking scene appeared. Kushina, who was still lying on the bed, suddenly flew backwards at a very fast speed. Kushina, Minato exclaimed, immediately stopped using the sealing technique and reached out to grab Kushina. Although his reaction was extremely fast, he was still a step too slow. Kushina was already controlled by a man whose whole body was covered by a black cloak. But Minato, who was about to rescue Kushina, felt a fluctuation in space before he could make any move. What? A scream came over, and Biwako, who was holding Naruto, suddenly fell to the ground with a hideous wound on her abdomen. Obito, wearing a tiger striped mask, appeared in front of him, reaching out to grab Naruto. Only the white-haired woman next to Lake Biwa beat him to it. He held Naruto in his arms. Bang! A burst of smoke appeared, and the white-haired woman was enveloped in a burst of smoke. After the smoke disappeared, a tall figure appeared on the field. It turned out to be Jiraiya. Obito's pupils shrank. Ninpo technique. Lion Chaos technique. Jiraiya held Naruto with his left hand and quickly formed seals with his right hand. The flowing white hair grew rapidly and swept towards Obito in front of him. So what about the Sanin? My plan has been successful, Obito chuckled, letting the white hair penetrated his body, and then his body disappeared. This is the space-time ninjutsu that Minato mentioned, Jiraiya thought to himself. Just in case, Minato not only brought Jiraiya to the birthing place, but also told him about the space and time ninjutsu point on the other side. Minato's figure had appeared beside the black-robed man, reaching out to grab Kushina point, but the next moment he stopped point. The man in black robe held a black rod in his hand, and pressed it against Kushina's neck. Stop. Fourth Hokage, if you take another step forward, your wife will die here. In this moment of confusion, Obito's figure appeared in front of the black-robed man. He reached out to hold Kushina's arm, and then directly activated his divine power. It's over, Yondaime. The next moment, he and Kushina disappeared at the same time point, and after the man in black robe glanced at Jiraiya behind him, there was a bang, and turned into a puff of smoke. Kushina. Big beads of sweat slid down Minato's face. He had been careful enough, but he didn't expect an accident. Go, Minato, leave Naruto to me, Jiraiya said with complicated eyes. The man in black robe just now gave him a familiar feeling. After giving Jiraiya a grateful look, Minato said nothing, closed his eyes, and began to sense Kushina's position. Kushina has the Flying Thunder God technique that he arranged in advance. In fact, he had already started to sense Kushina the moment she disappeared, but he just couldn't sense it. Found it. Minato opened his eyes suddenly, his sharp eyes filled with murderous intent. Swish. There was a flash of yellow light and his figure disappeared. The remaining Jiraiya felt a little powerless. In the face of the weird space and time ninjutsu, even he could not prevent the tragedy from happening. Then he took Naruto towards Konoha village. As for Biwako, who fell to the ground, there was no sound, and her body was received into the scroll by Jiraiya. What? A cry of pain resounded in the dense forest. At this time, Kushina was tied to the huge mountain by 4 chains. In her abdomen, the Kyuubi had completely unlocked the seal with the help of Obito, and the violent red energy had kept flowing from her belly. The dark night sky became weird under the rendering of this energy. Come out, Kyuubi. Obito on the side looked at Kushina's miserable state. A hint of complexity flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. Because Obito used the tail release seal on Kushina in the Kamu space, by now, Kyuubi has almost completely escaped. Outside Konoha village, in a secret forest, Ju, who was wrapped in pitcher plants, suddenly laughed. It actually worked. He had already received the news from the clone, and knew that Obito had successfully captured Kushina. Then it's your turn to perform. Chapter 7. 9 tails are unsealed, and 3 tails invade Konoha. Roar. With a deafening roar, the 9 tails that had been completely unsealed stood in front of Kushina, and the 9 steel-like giant tails kept hitting the ground. Kushina. That's right. Just as Kyuubi was about to reminisce about the past with his host, a scarlet eye that kept rotating met his eyes, and the next moment he lost consciousness. Damn. Uchiha, master, let's go, Obito said secretly in his heart, and then he gave Kyuubi the order to kill Kushina. Roar. With a roar, Kyuubi raised its huge front paws and stabbed Kushina, who was tied to the mountain. Swish. At the critical moment, yellow light flashed past, and Minato appeared next to Kushina. Without looking, Minato knew that the Nine Tails had been released just by the violent energy that spread throughout the place. With his extraordinary reflexes, Minato finally rescued Kushina before Kyuubi's claws arrived. As expected of the legendary yellow flash, it finally arrived, came Obito's hoarse voice, his tone full of sarcasm. But you seem to be a step late. Minato was shocked when he heard this. He turned his head and saw the miserable state of Kushina in his arms, with a look of killing intent appearing on his face. Even if you are Uchiha Madara, I will make you pay the price today. The space fluctuated, and Minato's figure disappeared again. Go, and destroyed completely. After Minato left, Obito gave Kyuubi the order to destroy Konoha. At the same time, a huge figure appeared outside Konoha village. It was a huge monster with convex horns all over its body and a grey turtle shell on its back. At the same time, this monster also had 3 crayfish-like tails. 3 tails. Gifu point in order to completely destroy Konoha. Obito was fully prepared this time. No one would have thought that the disappeared 4th generation Mizukage would actually come to Konoha and attack Konoha in a completely tail beast state attack. Roar. A roar immediately set off a violent impact wave. What is that? Alert. Alert. This violent air fluctuation instantly attracted the attention of Konoha ninjas. They were stunned when they saw the 3 tails, but they reacted the next second. Go and notify the Hokage-sama. Others, come with me to evacuate the crowd. Move quickly. Hinata Fiyu shouted. He is a member of the Hinata branch and the captain of this vigilance team. Aha. Aha. Everyone on the field took action quickly. In the Hokage's office, the 3rd generation in a black combat uniform moved very quickly towards the direction of the 3 tails. No one needed to remind him. He had noticed the surging chakra of the 3 tails as soon as it appeared. Did Minato and the others fail? Sandai thought to himself. No, that is. Although he hadn't arrived at the scene yet, Sandai still saw the huge body of the 3 tails. Although he had never seen the 3 tails, he could tell from the number of tails that it was not the 9 tails. What exactly is going on? Is this the 3 tails? Jiraiya, who was about to take Naruto back to Konoha, also noticed the 3 tails. His face turned ugly instantly. Psychicism. Jiraiya held Naruto and pinned him to the ground with one hand, and then a huge burst of white smoke appeared. After the smoke cleared, a giant red toad appeared on the field with a huge pipe in its mouth, a bandage on its waist, and a short sword stuck in its back. It was none other than Gamabunta, one of the 3 bastards from Mount Mayaboku. It turned out to be the 3 tails. Jiraiya didn't need to remind him. Bunta noticed the 3 tails, and I have to say that the huge amount of chakra was very eye-catching. You really know how to cause trouble. Jiraiya didn't need to say more. Bunta had already drawn the dagger from his back. He and Jiraiya had known each other for many years, so they still had a tacit understanding. Excuse me, Bunta, Jiraiya murmured. He was a little worried. It would be fine if it was just the 3 tails, but it would be hard to say if there was the 9 tails in Kushina's body. Then he held Naruto in one hand, stood on Bunta's back, and the 2 of them rushed towards the 3 tails in Minato's home. The special Kyune hanging in the room shook slightly, and then a burst of space fluctuations came, and Minato appeared here holding Kushina back. Naraku came to the room immediately after noticing the movement. His pupils shrank, and when he saw Kushina's appearance, he knew he had failed. How can that be possible? Naraku was in disbelief. He quickly walked up to Kushina and started to check her condition. Naraku, I'll leave Kushina to you. Minato put Kushina on the bed, said a word to Naraku, and disappeared into the room in a flash. Sister. Seeing such a weak Kushina, Naraku's eyes flashed with a hint of distress, and at the same time there was a hint of hatred. It's okay, Naraku. Even at this time, Kushina was still comforting Naraku. Sister, please stop talking. Naraku rolled up his sleeves and stretched his young arms in front of Kushina. Naraku, what are you doing? Seeing Naraku's actions, Kushina's heart was shocked. Everyone knows that the Uzumaki clan has a large amount of chakra and is good at sealing techniques, but few people know that their bodies have strong recovery capabilities. But there is another thing that almost no one knows. They can not only recover themselves, but also heal others. Kushina also has this ability, but she has never used it in front of others. As for her own strong recovery ability, others will only think that it is because of the Kyuubi in her body. In the entire Konoha, they were the only ones who truly understood the abilities of the Uzumaki clan. However, Kushina remembered that she had not told Naraku about this. Sister, don't hesitate. Don't you want to see Naruto? Seeing Kushina's hesitation, Naraku couldn't help but urge. Sure enough, as soon as she heard Naruto, Kushina's expression changed instantly, and she felt a sharp pain in her heart. She had never even seen the newly born Naruto. Thinking of this, she hesitated. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, she could clearly feel that her vitality was slowly disappearing. Even she could not hold on for long. However, her ability to hold on until now is enough to prove the horror of the Uzumaki clan. You must know that the average Jinchuriki basically died on the spot after the tailed beast was extracted. Compared with them, it was a miracle that Kushina, who had experienced the pain of childbirth and was separated from the tailed beast, could still speak now. Let me help you. Naraku put his arm directly into her mouth and then lifted his other hand directly towards her chin. Almost instantly, Naraku felt that a certain energy in his body was rapidly draining, and Kushina's complexion began to slowly recover. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8. The Diamond Chain suppresses the Nine Tails. Outside Konoha village, boom, there was a loud noise, and a huge red toad was knocked away. Ah, you okay, Bunter? Came Jiraiya's worried voice. Although Bunter was very strong, there was still a big gap compared to the Three Tails. In addition, Jiraiya was holding Naruto at this time, and was unable to fight with all his strength. For a while, they were directly at a disadvantage. Roar. Suddenly a loud roar reached his ears, and almost instantly Jiraiya felt a violent and bloody energy coming from him. That's Kyuubi. Looking at the huge figure running towards Konoha not far away, Jiraiya had a bitter look on his face. If it were just Three Tails, he could barely hold on, but if he added Nine Tails, he would have no chance of winning. At this moment, Kyuubi's huge body was almost here. No matter in terms of momentum or size, the Three Tails are far inferior to the Nine Tails. Roar. Taking advantage of Jiraiya's daze, the Three Tails on the side took the opportunity to rush forward. Ape. Demon. Vajra Ruai Stick. Just when the Three Tails were about to enter Konoha, a huge iron rod appeared and pushed forward heavily. Here comes the old man. Seeing this familiar ninjutsu, Jiraiya knew who it was. Get back, shouted angrily, and Sandai, who was wearing a black combat uniform, exerted force. Under this huge force, Sanwa's huge body began to retreat. Swish. The space fluctuated, and Minato's figure appeared next to Jiraiya. The pupils shrank for a while. Not only the Three Tails, he also noticed the Nine Tails. I'm sorry, Jiraiya-sensei. A look of guilt appeared on Minato's face. Okay, now is not the time to talk about this. Send Naruto back first, Jiraiya said, handing Naruto to Minato. Minato also understood that the current situation was very tense, so he reached out to take Naruto, and after giving the third generation behind him an apologetic look, he used the Flying Thunder God again to leave. Yoshi, Bunter is ready for a big fight. Jiraiya's bold voice came. It's really troublesome, Wente complained, but still assumed a fighting posture and began to accumulate strength. Bang. Bunter's huge body jumped with all his strength and jumped directly over the Three Tails. Roar. At this moment, Kyuubi's huge body rushed over. Toad. Oil flame bomb. Jiraiya and Bunter said at the same time. Deep red flames like lava erupted from Jiraiya's mouth, while Bunter ejected a large amount of butter from his mouth. When the flames and flammable oil were combined together, there was a bang, and the fire instantly became extremely fierce, speeding towards the Kyuubi in front. The third generation on the other side also led Sanwei to another area in a tacit understanding. Although he is now past his prime, his strength cannot be underestimated. The wish-fulfilling stick transformed by the 8th demon was waved in his hand, and Hu Shengfeng was able to resist the three-tailed tail that had completely transformed into a tailed beast on his own for a while. But he understood that this was only temporary. He could clearly feel the chakra in his body draining rapidly, and he might lose his fighting ability before long. The situation for Jiraiya on the other side was even worse. Although he had Bunter's help, he was facing the strongest tailed beast Ninetales. Even if he couldn't exert his full power, because he was controlled by Obito, it was not something Jiraiya could contend with. Jiraiya was breathing heavily, his long flowing hair was covered with dirt, and he looked a little embarrassed. Sorry, Jiraiya, my chakra has been exhausted. As soon as he finished speaking, Bunter's huge body turned into a ball of white mist with a bang. Thank you, Bunter, Jiraiya said in his heart, facing two tailed beasts one after another. The second one was the strongest Ninetales. As a psychic beast, Bunter had done his best. Roar. Kyuubi roared angrily. Being controlled by Obito, he only had one thought in his mind, which was to crush Konoha. The huge body tensed slightly, and Ninetales opened his huge mouth slightly, and a powerful energy gathered in his mouth. Soon this energy turned into a blue-black spherical object. No, it's the tailed beast Jade, Jiraiya exclaimed. Boom. The huge tailed beast Jade tore through the air, and swept forward at extremely fast speeds. The strong impact directly tore a crack on the ground. A wry smile appeared on Jiraiya's face. With the power he currently possesses, he cannot resist the ultimate killing move like the tailed beast Jade. Suddenly, the space in front of him fluctuated, and two familiar figures stood in front of him. Dressed in white godly robes, and with dazzling blonde hair, he is none other than his most outstanding disciple at the moment, the fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato. When he saw the figure next to him, Jiraiya's pupils trembled slightly. He had red hair full of blood, and was wearing the green vest of a Konoha Jounin. Kushina, what's wrong with her? Jiraiya was a little surprised. Looks like I came at the right time. Minato, who had just transferred, saw the tailed beast Jade, that contained violent energy. Without any hesitation, he flashed and was already in front of the tailed beast Jade when he reappeared. The special kunai was placed across his chest, and he shouted softly, the Flying Thunder God's technique. The space in front of him fluctuated like a tide, and the tailed beast Jade slowly submerged into the space. Boom. Soon there was a violent explosion in the distance, and a ball of fire visible to the naked eye rose into the sky. Phew, it worked. Minato breathed out lightly. Transmitting such a huge amount of energy from the tailed beast Jade also consumed a lot of his chakra. Kyuubi, please be honest with me. At this moment, Kushina was already standing in front of Kyuubi. Although her face was still a little pale, it was much better than before. After absorbing most of the energy in Naraku's body, Kushina returned to this state. Vajra. Chain, Kushina shouted, and a powerful energy surged through her body. 9 chains formed by chakra rushed towards Kyuubi. Roar. With a roar, even though he was controlled, a feeling of resentment arose in Kyuubi's heart. This emotion was very strong, but it still did not break Obito's control over him. Rumble. Under the control of Ninetales, the 9 giant tails and the diamond chains behind him collided. Humph. Kushina snorted. In the ninja world at this time, if we want to say who knows the Kyuubi the best, no one dares to say first if Kushina is second. If it weren't for the fact that her body was too weak due to childbirth, and Obito used the tail unlocking seal on her, Kushina would usually use him as a power bank, let alone breaking through the seal. Clang. Clang. Clang, the 9 chains moved quickly in the air and quickly suppressed the Kyuubi. Swish. Minato appeared in front of Kushina. The two looked at each other, and then Minato put his hand on Kushina's shoulder. At the same time, the 9 huge diamond chains burst out with strong power again. Be honest with me, shouted angrily, and with Kushina's full strength, Kyuubi was already firmly bound by the chain. Chapter 9 Minato's Worst Plan. Jiraiya sensei, I'll leave this to you. Minato turned to Jiraiya and showed a gentle smile. Then the space fluctuated violently. Minato, Kushina, and Kyuubi disappeared at the same time. Here it is, Minato, Kushina. For some reason, Jiraiya felt a little flustered at this moment, as if something unexpected was about to happen. Jiraiya, just as he was dazed, an urgent cry for help came into his ears. When he heard the sound, it was Sunday Point at this time. The third generation was exhausted. His combat uniform was soaked with sweat, the hand holding the Ruai Vajra rod was trembling, and there was not much chakra left in his body. Teacher, you have become weak. Jiraiya murmured. He had no choice but to give up the idea of helping Minato, and began to suppress the three tails with the three generations at this time. There were dozens of figures standing behind the third generation. Narashikaku, Akimichi Dingza, and other elites from the family were all here, but they did not dare to join the battle in front of them. Rashly Point, the power of the tail beast was not something they could contend with. Point in Konoha village, not far from the Senju clan's clan. Who the hell are you? Tsunade shouted angrily with her eyes closed, and her body could be seen trembling. At this time, there were more than a dozen figures standing in front of her, but they were all covered in black robes, making it difficult to see their appearance. If it were just these people, they would definitely not be able to compete with Tsunade, one of the three ninjas. But now Tsunade has a fatal weakness, the fear of blood. Naraku made a miscalculation. The current Tsunade has not been suffering from anemia for more than 10 years like in the original work. Point in the final analysis, the reason why Tsunade suffered from hemophobia was simply because she could not accept the death of Dan and Naoki. Point however, no matter how deep the wound is, it will heal slowly over time. After more than 10 years, she has almost recovered. Coupled with Prince Neru's mouth escape during the recovery is also normal. Point, but it was different now this period. Her fear of blood was still very strong. These men in black robes took advantage of this to keep Tsunade here. With the help of the moonlight, it could be seen that Tsunade was surrounded by scarlet blood. Point she, who was as strong as one of the three ninjas, was dragged here like this. Tick tock. Tick tock. In a gloomy room, there are potions of different colors and various experimental equipment. Point this is Orochimaru's laboratory, and he has a special guest here today. Point the right eye and right arm are covered with bandages. It is Danzo Shimura, one of the three advisors of Konoha and the leader of the founding root. Point opposite him was Orochimaru. The fierce fighting outside Konoha village could not be hidden from the two of them. Orochimaru sneered. Such interesting things happened in the village. Elder Danzo doesn't plan to go and see it. Humph, Orochimaru, there are some things you'd better not get involved in. Wouldn't it be nice to stay here and conduct your experiments with peace of mind? Danzo said in a lukewarm tone, and his expressionless face made it unclear what he was thinking. Hearing these threatening words, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Are the materials from last time still useful? At this moment, Danzo spoke again in a neutral tone. Orochimaru's expression changed when he heard this, but he quickly recovered, sticking out his tongue and licking his lips. Yes, it's better to stay in the laboratory with peace of mind. After all, the task assigned by you, Elder Danzo, has not been completed yet. HMPH. Danzo snorted coldly in his heart. Hiruzen, I'm doing this all for Konoha, and the Hokage will be mine sooner or later. In Minato's house. Wow. Wow. Listening to Naruto's cries, Naraku had a bitter look on his face. He had never taken care of a child in his two lives. In addition, at this time, he was worried about Kushina and the others, so he was a little impatient and could not calm down to comfort him. Naruto. Point you can see that his face is slightly pale, and there is a hint of fatigue between his eyebrows. This is the sequel of helping others recover from their injuries, but Naraku has no regrets. This is the only thing he can help now. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked out the window. His young body tensed up, protecting Naruto behind him, but after seeing that familiar silver, he relaxed. It's Brother K. But the next second, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Kakashi, wearing a cat face mask, walked into the room, and behind him, there was another person following him, wearing a green vest over a green tights. He has eyebrow thicks. Brother K, you're here too. Naraku was still a little surprised. He didn't expect Kakashi to bring K here. He guessed in his heart that this was all Minato's arrangement. Although many things had changed because of the information he revealed, it seemed that Minato was still prepared for the worst point. Kakashi and Gai were probably sent here to take Naruto there. Naraku, Sensei asked me to take you and Naruto to his place, Kakashi said. His tone was full of doubts. Although he knew about Kushina's birth, he didn't know that Kyuubi had broken through the seal point originally. He was going to go outside the village to support the third generation, but he was stopped by Minato on the way, and then Minato gave him this task point because he had to take 2 people with him. Kakashi pulled Gai over halfway. Take the 2 of us. The worst plan is to make both of us Jinchuriki? Naraku thought secretly in his heart. However, I will not let my sister die. In a dense forest outside Konoha village, the originally stable space suddenly fluctuated violently, and then a huge figure suddenly appeared and landed heavily on the ground. The huge figure seemed to be bound by several iron chains. Although he kept struggling, he still could not break free. It was Kyuubi, and then Kushina and Minato also appeared here. Well, suddenly, Kushina, who had just landed, staggered and almost fell to the ground. Minato on the side saw this and quickly reached out to support her. Sinner, Minato said with a hint of distress in his eyes. I'm fine. Kushina shook her head, signaling Minato not to worry about her. Let's deal with the Kyuubi first. Kushina steeled herself and worked hard to control the diamond chains to tightly bind the Kyuubi point. Although her body recovered a little with Naraku's help, it could only be regarded as a temporary measure. At most, it could only delay her death and restore some chakra. She would not be able to escape death after losing her Jinchuriki point. Unless the 9 tails in front of her were sealed into her body again, she could recover. Chapter 10 Scarlet Eyes. Outside Konoha village, Kyuubi's huge body was tightly bound by chains. Although her body was very weak, Kushina's eyes became more determined. She wanted to seal the Kyuubi into her body again. She didn't want to die like this. She couldn't let go of her brother, her husband, and even let her newly born child. Kyuubi, get over here, mother. Kushina once again burst out with amazing momentum, her red hair swaying in the wind, and Konoha's blood red pepper came online again. Don't worry, Zine, I won't let anything happen to you. Minato on the side noticed Kushina's change and swore secretly in his heart. Suddenly his pupils shrank sharply. Is it coming? Above Kyuubi's head, after a moment of space shaking, Obito, wearing a large black suit and a one-eyed tiger print mask, appeared again. As expected of member of the Uzumaki clan, even after experiencing the pain of giving birth and having the tailed beast separated, he can still burst out with such power. Seeing the Kyuubi completely restrained, Obito was deeply surprised. Kushina's tenacity exceeded his expectations. But, let's stop here. Obito's scarlet eyes lit up, and Obito's eyes became sharp again. He raised his hand, and was about to attack Kushina, but the next moment a yellow figure appeared, and stood in front of him. I will never let you succeed again. Minato's firm eyes were also full of sharpness. Swish. 2 figures, one yellow and one black, kept flashing on the field. Kamu and Flying Thunder God, 2 kinds of time and space ninjutsu, started their first confrontation. The body will only be converted into a physical entity when attacking. Minato carefully analyzed Obito's abilities in his mind. Naraku had already told him this in advance, so he had a plan from the beginning. Swish. Minato's figure disappeared from the spot. Oh, it still lure me away, Obito murmured. Then as you wish. Minato's figure appeared in an open grassland. There is not much chakra left in the body, and the battle must be resolved as soon as possible. Kushina's side is still very dangerous. Minato secretly thought in his heart, just teleporting the 9 tails and tailed beast jade consumed most of his chakra, not to mention that he had used Flying Thunder God many times before. Yondaime, you are destined to fall today. Obito came to Minato again. His scarlet eyes filled with endless killing intent. Originally, his plan was just to release the 9 tails to cause some trouble to Konoha, but now he has changed his plan. Compared to the 9 tails, which is easily controlled by the main Gekai Sharingan, Minato who masters the Flying Thunder God will be his biggest challenge in the future. Hinder. Is it really Uchiha Madara? Looking at Obito wearing a mask, Minato thought to himself. But when I think about how easily the other party can control the 9 tails, coupled with the weird time and space ninjutsu, maybe only the legendary ninja Shura can do it. Clang, clang. At this moment, the chain slipped from Obito's black robe. He is known as the fastest man in the ninja world. Haha, I'm faster than you now. Obito grinned in his heart and rushed towards Minato with the chain in his hand. Seeing this, Minato didn't dare to be careless at all. He held the special kunai tightly in his hand, and his body also surged forward. The sharp kunai pierced out. The bodies of the two people approached extremely quickly, and without any surprise, both kunai and Minato's bodies penetrated Obito's body point. The next moment, when their bodies were completely separated, Obito held the chain in his hand and tightened it fiercely. Swish. But just when the chain was about to wrap around Minato, he used the Flying Thunder God to dodge it point the other side. Haha. Kushina was sweating profusely and breathing heavily. The continuous explosions had long since exhausted the energy Naraku had given her, and now she was just relying on willpower to hold on point. Although Kyuubi was still bound by the diamond chain at this time, Kushina could no longer drag him into her body. TSK, you are worthy of being a member of the Uzumaki clan. Even like this, you can still hold back the Nine Tails. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from behind her. Who is it? Kushina was about to turn around. Puff. Scarlet blood spurted out, and a sharp arm made of wood stabbed into her body. PFFT. Blood spilled from the corner of Kushina's mouth, and her weak body was still shaking violently, as if she would fall to the ground at any time. Sister. Suddenly, a shout came. It's an illusion. Kushina thought she heard wrong, but I really want to see you again, Chidori. At this moment, Kakashi and Anbu appeared behind Kushina. Lightning flashed on his hand, and the sound of birdsong reached Kushina's ears. It's Kakashi. Chidori's voice reawakened Kushina's unconscious consciousness. Kakashi, using Chidori, forced back the people behind Kushina. Looking at the figure shrouded in pitcher plants in front of him, Kakashi's scarlet left eye kept spinning. Call out. At this time, a figure appeared again on the field. It was K. At the same time, he was holding Naruto in his arms and carrying Naraku on his back. Quickly jumping off K's back, Naraku didn't even look at the strange looking Zetsu. He quickly walked up to Kushina and handed over his arm, with tears shining in his eyes. Hurry, bite, bite quickly, Naraku shouted in a trembling tone, trying to use his arms to peel Kushina's mouth apart. Roar. Suddenly a deafening roar came from Kyuubi. At this time, Kushina was weaker than ever. Although she tried her best to maintain it, Kyuubi still broke free from the restraints. Clang, clang, the chains broke one by one. It seems like I'm no longer needed here. Ja laughed after seeing this scene and dived underground. Without hesitation, Kakashi moved, and when he reappeared, he was already standing in front of Kyuubi, who was about to escape. Behind he were Kushina and Naraku. Hey, Kakashi, you can't leave me behind for this kind of thing, a bold voice came. After placing Naruto next to Kushina, Ge and Kakashi stood side by side. Now they are just teenagers. Naraku felt a little moved, but he knew that even Kakashi and Ge couldn't stop Kyuubi. They haven't grown up yet. Kakashi, you. Kushina, who could barely maintain consciousness, saw this scene, and she was moved and felt a sense of powerlessness in her heart. Even though what she had penetrated just now was not her vitals, she still felt she lost a lot of blood and felt like she might really die. Naraku, no, your body. Suddenly, a flash of scarlet appeared in front of Kushina's eyes, who was about to speak. In her sight, Naraku's dark eyes turned extremely scarlet, and she was stunned for a moment. Naraku also took the opportunity to put his arm in her mouth. Chapter 11 Naraku's life experience. Tears, hot tears flowed from Kushina's eyes. Sister, you have to protect Naruto. Naraku's weak voice came into her ears. The next moment, his body fell directly to the ground, and his scarlet eyes slowly closed. Although he had the powerful physique of the Uzumaki clan, he was too young and continued to recover from Kushina, but his body was still exhausted after all. Sure enough, it's still open. Sharingan. Kushina thought secretly in her heart, but then her eyes, that were about to become distracted, focused again. This time, the energy absorbed from Naraku's body was similar to the last time, although it could not keep her alive. but there is still no problem in delaying the death date a little. Point as for Naraku's identity, just like his own guess, he is not Kushina's biological brother. Naraku was discovered by her and Minato in the ruins of the Kingdom of Whirlpool. No one knows how a newborn baby could show up there. However, as a pure-blooded Uzumaki clan, as soon as Naraku appeared, Kushina felt a familiar feeling on him, just like the mutual echo between bloodlines. Combined with Naraku's red hair, that was the same as hers, Kushina concluded that he was an orphan of the Uzumaki clan. But the strangest thing is that the swaddling clothes that wrapped Naraku at that time had a pattern similar to a round fan printed on it. Just like the emblem of the Uchiha clan. It was because of this that Minato asked Fugaku to check Naraku several times. Like Kushina, Fugaku felt very familiar when he saw Naraku for the first time. Although the hybrid of the Uzumaki and Uchiha clans sounded incredible, Minato and the others didn't care much about it. They just asked Fugaku to conceal the matter, and the latter agreed. Although it was just an adoption, Kushina had long regarded Naraku as her biological brother. Don't worry Naraku, I will protect Naruto and yours. Kushina cheered up. Clang, clang. Under her control, the broken chains were put back together again, and the Ninetales, which had been mostly out of trouble, was tied up again. Haha, but after doing this, Kushina had no energy to do anything else. She reached out to help Naraku up from the ground and wanted to hug Naruto, but in the end she put down her arms weakly. She wanted to save her energy to restrain Kyuubi, and she wanted to wait for Minato to come back. Teachers, wife, Kushina-sama, Kakashi and Gei's voices sounded at the same time, but the exhausted Kushina had no strength to answer them anymore. The speed should be faster, Obito thought in his heart. After a brief confrontation, he also realized some problems, but he was still full of confidence. He firmly believed that in terms of level, his power was definitely above that of the Flying Thunder God. The reason why he couldn't catch the opponent was just because his own speed was not fast enough. Physical attacks have no effect on him at all, but in that state he can't attack me. The two analyzed each other's tactics. As long as he attacks me once, a flaw will be exposed, and that's my chance. Call out. Throwing a kunai at Obito, Minato got up and attacked him again. Speed is just about comparing who is faster. Today, I will end the myth of Yellow Flash. Clang. Swinging the chain, he threw the kunai aside, and when he saw Minato rushing over, Obito smiled ferociously in his heart. He faced him directly, the chains in his hands clanking, and he planned to launch a direct attack. Dada. In the silent night sky, only the footsteps of the two people were left, and the distance between them became shorter and shorter. Call out. Suddenly, Minato threw a special kunai at him again. It's useless, Obito sneered in his mind as the kunai penetrated directly through his body. The distance between the two was less than 2 meters, and Obito waved the chain in his hand and wrapped it around Minato. But, without avoiding it, Minato still maintained his forward posture, but suddenly raised his right hand, and a blue ball of chakra light rose in his palm. At this time, the iron chain was close to the god robe on his body. And Obito's other hand also grabbed his shoulder. It's over, Yellow Flash. I have surpassed you in terms of speed, teacher. Visible to the naked eye, Minato's Rasengan was farther away than the chains that had touched his robes and the hands grabbing his shoulders. Obito is very confident that, as long as his palm can touch Minato, he can transfer it to the Kamu space in an instant. By then, there will be no more yellow flashes in the ninja world. Swish. Just when Obito was preparing for victory, Minato suddenly disappeared in front of him. The kunai that had previously penetrated Obito's body had now reached his back. The next moment, a handsome figure appeared and held the kunai Rasengan. Then, without any hesitation, he turned around and pressed the Rasengan directly onto Obito's back. Boom. The Rasengan spun at an extremely high speed, directly slamming Obito's body to the ground. The powerful impact was transmitted to the ground, and the surrounding ground began to crack. It was the kunai just now. The severe pain in his back made him calm down, and he said in surprise after realizing it. Under the mask, Obito's mouth showed self-mockery. He thought he had seen through the Flying Thunder God's moves, but he didn't expect this result. there was a burst of space fluctuation, and he activated his divine power again, barely stood up and retreated, still not able to solve it. Minato frowned upon seeing this, but his combat effectiveness will be greatly reduced. He was about to step forward and attack again. At this moment, Zetsu, who was shrouded in pitcher plants, poked his head out from the ground. The fourth Hokage, why don't you go see your wife? She is going to die soon. Ju said with a playful smile on his face. Sine. His words made Minato stop. He didn't dare to bet whether the other party was lying to him. At this time, the chakra in his body was almost bottomed out. Even if they can capture these two people, they may not be able to return to Kushina by then. After taking a deep look at the two of them, Minato used Flying Thunder God again and left. Haha, I didn't expect you to be defeated by him. Let's go. There won't be a next time. With that said, Obito turned around and left here. At this time, he was already injured, and staying here would only cause more accidents. By the way, let Yagura retreat. No matter what, the harvest this time is not small. Well, Kushina, who was extremely weak, let out a cry of pain. Click. Click. At the same time, the chains that bound the Ninetales began to break one by one again. You guys go quickly. Kushina used her last breath to say to Kakashi and Kei beside her. At this time, Kakashi was holding Naruto in his arms, while Kei was carrying Naraku, who fainted. Master. Seeing Kushina like this, Kakashi lost the luster in his eyes again. Just when he was about to say something, a yellow figure appeared and stood in front of him. Chapter 12 The Gowl Ban. Raw. As the chains that bound the Vajra broke, Ninetales once again broke through the shackles, and this time his eyes had restored their vertical pupils. Because Obito was injured and could no longer maintain control over him, he chose to leave as Kyuubi roared. The surrounding air instantly fluctuated. At this time, Kyuubi's combat power was even stronger. The bloody vertical pupils looked at the people on the ground. At this time, Kyuubi's heart was filled with anger, both towards the masked man and towards Kushina. Minato. Seeing that handsome figure again, a smile appeared on Kushina's lips, and then the consciousness she was holding on to began to slowly fade away, and then her body lost its center of gravity, and began to fall to one side. Sinner. Minato murmured while reaching out to support Kushina. There was a hint of sadness in his eyes, but more of a determination. He could tell at a glance that Kushina's situation was not optimistic at this time. Although she still retained a glimmer of vitality, there was a high possibility that she would never wake up again. Kakashi, I leave Kushina and Naruto to you. Kei, please take care of Naraku. After handing Kushina to Kakashi, Minato flashed, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Kyuubi. Minato, who had already made up his mind, did not hesitate at all, and quickly formed seals with his hands already. Hey, and Mao, Garrison. Already. Finally Minato clasped his hands together and shouted loudly. Gowls are banned. As Minato finished speaking, a special energy appeared behind him. Slowly, this energy began to gather, and finally a shadow of the god of death with a short sword in his mouth stood behind him. The top sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan, at the cost of life, summons a god of death to seal the opponent. In other words, when Minato completed the last seal, he had already signed a contract with the god of death, and sold his soul to the god of death. After he sealed the target, his soul would be swallowed by the god of death, and then his own the soul will remain in the belly of death forever. What the hell is this? Kyuubi, who finally broke free completely, was shocked by the shadow of the god of death behind Minato. Before he could burst into anger, you must know that he is the leader of the nine-tailed beasts, and he is a being known as the demon fox. It has always been his nine tails that make others afraid, but today he actually felt a chill in the shadow of the god of death. Raw. You are all going to die today. With a roar, a violent energy gathered in front of Kyuubi's fox head, and he wanted to use the tailed beast Jade again to destroy everything in front of him. What kind of ninjutsu is that? Kakashi was also shocked by the ninjutsu used by Minato. He knew that his teacher was good at sealing techniques, but this was the first time he had seen such a technique. But for some reason, there was a bad feeling in my heart. As expected of the fourth generation, the single-celled K didn't think too much. He just simply felt that this ninjutsu was very powerful. I won't let you succeed again. Minato also noticed Kyuubi's movements. His expression tightened, and then he controlled the death shadow to get closer to Kyuubi. The huge shadow of the death god was even bigger than Kyuubi. The shadow of death moved extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Kyuubi. Under Minato's control, the shadow stretched out its huge palm towards Kyuubi. How could you possibly succeed? The 9 huge tails struck hard at the shadow of the god of death in front of him, but a shocking scene appeared the next moment. The 9 giant tails directly passed through the shadow's body point at this time. The death god shadow had already put his hand on Kyuubi. Boom. Boom. In an instant, 9 tails' heart was beating wildly, and its huge body was completely frozen in place. The tail beast Jade, that had not yet formed in front of the fox's head, also dissipated due to the lack of subsequent energy supply. Come out. At this time, Minato's body made a pulling motion, and at the same time, the death shadow also made the same motion as him. As the god of death continued to pull, a complete 9-tailed shadow appeared in his hand. This is Kyuubi's soul. As the soul is extracted, Kyuubi's huge body turns into a ball of blood red energy and dissipates. Tailed beasts have no body. Their bodies are composed of chakra. Put Naruto and Kushina on the ground. Minato turned to Kakashi and said. From the way he was sweating profusely, it could be seen that Minato was not feeling well at this time point. Without saying anything, the two quickly put Kushina and Naruto on the ground, and at the same time they took a few steps back to put a little distance between them. They had already guessed what Minato was going to do, but what made Kakashi a little strange was why they let Naruto and Kushina go there together. But Kakashi knew the reason the next moment. Wow. At this time, Naruto didn't know what was happening. He just kept crying. Minato then controlled the death shadow to cut Kyuubi's soul in half. In an instant, Kyuubi's huge soul body turned into 2 smaller soul bodies. The 2 phantom arms of the death god moved at the same time, placing 2 9-tailed soul bodies into Kushina and Naruto's bodies. This is Minato's final plan. Of course, he actually has a worse plan. If Kushina really has an accident, then he will seal the other half of Kyuubi into Naraku's body. Let him and Naruto both become Jinchuriki. As for the Jinchurika's encounter with Minato, he also knew clearly, but he believed that his son and younger brother would one day be able to master the power of the 9 tails. But luckily it didn't come to that point. Swish. Minato flashed and came to Kushina. Blue chakra appeared on his right hand. 4. Symbol seal. With a low cry, Minato placed his right hand on Kushina's abdomen. As he continued to output chakra, a swelling technique gradually formed, and then the seal was completed. Feeling this familiar place, Yanjiue slowly opened his eyes. Although he looked a little weak at this time, his vertical pupils were still full of intimidation. Suddenly he seemed to feel something, and his expression suddenly changed. Damn Minato. He has already noticed Kushina's physical condition at this time. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is no different than when the oil is exhausted. It is a miracle that she can hold on until now. Kyuubi slowly closed his eyes and slowly lay on the ground, a dark red energy slowly dissipating from his body. The Jinchuriki in the tailed beast are one. If Kushina dies, he will also die. Although he still has his other half in the world, Yanjiue doesn't want to die like this, so he chose to save Kushina. With the energy emitted by the Yin 9 tails, Kushina's injuries began to slowly recover. In reality, Minato also noticed the slowly healing wounds on Kushina's body, and he secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Chapter 13 Minato's death. At the border of Konoha village, under the interception of Jiraiya the 3 tails finally entered the village without breaking through the defense line. After Obito was seriously injured by Minato, Yagura also received news of White Zetsu, and he also retreated. But even when he retreated, he did so while maintaining his tailed beast form. After confirming the 3-tailed retreat, Jiraiya rushed in one direction. His brows furrowed, and the uneasiness in his heart became stronger. Watergate. The 3rd generation looked a little tired, and his chest was heaving, and he was breathing heavily. Aha. Several figures dressed as Enbu appeared around him. The Enbu personnel wore masks, and didn't know what they were saying. However, the 3rd generation's expression suddenly changed, and then he didn't care about anything else. After a few simple instructions, he led a few people and chased in the direction of Jiraiya. Several people were left behind by the third generation and they were responsible for the logistics. Although the Three Tails did not break through Konoha's defense line, the aftermath of the battle still affected nearby houses. Fortunately, the civilians nearby had been dispersed in advance, and no huge casualties were caused. Thousand Hand Clanland. Oh, is it over yet? The men in black robes surrounding Tsunade also got the news and began to retreat. The bodies of all the men in black robes slowly sank into the ground until they disappeared, leaving only Tsunade squatting on the spot helplessly, her body still trembling. Boom. A burst of white smoke appeared. In Orochimaru's laboratory, Danzo, whose head was bandaged, slowly stood up and then walked outside without saying a word. Oh, has the wind stopped? Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a sneer. Then he got up and continued his experiment. Well, Kushina, who fell asleep, let out a cry of pain. Although her body had recovered, she did not wake up. After experiencing this series of events, not only was her body severely damaged, but her mind was also damaged, and it would be difficult to wake up in a short time. Seeing this scene, Minato's eyes flashed with disappointment. He still wanted to say goodbye to Kushina properly, but it seemed that he couldn't do that now. Suddenly his body took a step back, and at the same time, the Shinigami arm on Naruto's abdomen also moved. Wow. Perhaps feeling pain or something else, Naruto cried loudly. It seems the time is almost up. Minato smiled bitterly, and then he no longer hesitated, and blue chakra appeared on his hand again. 4. Symbol seal, just like before, the same whirlpool technique appeared on Naruto's body. After doing all this, Minato completely exhausted the chakra in his body. In fact, his original plan was to seal it with Bagua, but he couldn't do it because of insufficient chakra in his body. Naruto, dad is gone. You have to listen to mom and uncle from now on. Despair. Suddenly his body retreated uncontrollably. A figure flashed past him very quickly and appeared in front of him. Kakashi stretched out his hand to hold Minato, but failed in the end. However, he did not give up. He had already lost too much and ran forward wildly. His eyes were a little moist, and Kakashi had already noticed something at this time. K behind him was also silent. He just stood in front of Kushina and Naruto with Naraku on his back, watching the surroundings. Kakashi, teacher is going to find Obito and Lin. Don't be sad, and live well with our will. Also, don't forget to practice. It will be your turn to protect everyone next time. Besides, well, Minato, who was still about to say something, lost consciousness in an instant, and the next moment his body stopped and fell into Kakashi's arms. Minato's soul body stood above him, and Kakashi looked up while holding back tears on his face. Teacher, I will do what you said. Kakashi's scarlet left eye kept spinning, and a bloody tear fell from the corner of his eye. The 3 black Magatama in the scarlet eyes kept rotating, gradually forming a black triangular pinwheel. The main Jiki Sharingan, which was already activated, was once again stimulated to appear. After losing his beloved teacher, in fact, Kakashi's Sharingan had already activated the kaleidoscope when Lin died, but he did not have the blood of the Uchiha clan, and neither his pupil power nor the amount of chakra met the conditions for the activation of the kaleidoscope. This is also the reason why he has never opened the main Jiki Sharingan until now. The kaleidoscope is a huge load for him, and it is simply not something he can maintain now. So just for a moment, the kaleidoscope once again turned into the state of 3 Magatama. Kakashi stumbled and almost fell to the ground. That pupil power is an illusion. Minato, who has a soul body, also has strong perception ability. At that moment, he felt a pupil power similar to that of the masked man. Swish. At this moment, a tall figure appeared on the field, with long flowing hair covered with dirt, and a tired face full of sadness. Minato, Minato, smiled when he saw the visitor, waved his hand and said, "Goodbye Jiraiya-sensei," but he might not know that Jiraiya couldn't hear his voice at this time, as Minato continued to speak. Then his soul body was swallowed by the god of death. Naraku, this family will be left to you. Sinner, I love you. After the last 2 sentences flashed through his mind, Minato completely lost consciousness. The shadow of the god of death also disappeared here and submerged into a different space. Aha. Aha. At this moment, several more figures came here. It was the third generation and several Anbu. When he saw Minato in Kakashi's arms, the third generation's pupils shrank sharply. With his perception, he could naturally tell at a glance that Minato had lost his voice and turned into a corpse. 4 generations, the 4th generation, not only him, but also the Anbu were also shocked. Though the name of Konoha's Yellow Flash had been known to everyone since the 3rd Ninja War, they never imagined that the 4th generation would die here. Wow. For a moment, everyone else on the field was silent except for Naruto's cry. After a long time, Jiraiya broke the calm and said, "That child is Minato and Kushina's child, and he is also the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails." Jiraiya pointed at Naruto on the ground. "Child, Jinchuriki." The 3rd generation's expression changed upon hearing this, and he turned around and saw the sealing technique on Naruto's belly. "Kushina is seriously injured and unconscious. I want to take her to Tsunade for treatment. I'm leaving first." Jiraiya dragged his tired body to help Kushina, who was on the ground. At this time, Kushina was covered with wearing a white divine robe. It was Minato's. Chapter 14 Mental Trauma, Funeral. The identity of the Jinchuriki is set as an S-class secret of the village. If anyone leaks the information, he will be regarded as a traitor to the village. The 3rd generation said in a deep voice after Jiraiya left. As he spoke, he exuded a shadow-level aura. Yes, whether it was Kakashi, Gai or the 2 Anbu, they all bowed their heads and replied respectfully, "Kindness." Seeing this, the 3rd Hokage nodded lightly, then turned to the Anbu behind him and said, "Pass this order." The 4th Hokage died with the enemy in order to protect the village and is regarded as a hero of Konoha. "Yes," Andeo responded, then turned and left here. Boom. Kakashi sealed Minato's body in the scroll and then placed it on himself. Sandai didn't say anything when he saw this scene. Then he bent down and picked Naruto up from the ground. With blue eyes and dazzling blonde hair, "Minato, this kid looks a lot like you." Then, the group all set off back to the village. On the way, he handed Naruto to Kakashi and asked him to take Naruto to Tsunade and ask her to help check his body. It's a matter of Jinchuriki, and the 3rd generation doesn't dare to be careless. As for Naraku, who was unconscious, Kei was brought there too, while Sandai himself returned to the Hokage's office. Although exhausted, he now still has to deal with the aftermath and appease the people. Like the original work, after Minato died, the 3rd generation returned to the position of Hokage. The next day, Naraku, who was lying on the hospital bed, let out a cry of pain and then slowly opened his eyes. "You're awake," a pretty girl wearing a nurse's uniform said to him. "Who are you?" Naraku stood up from the bed. After a night of recovery, he just felt a little headache and weak. Suddenly, he thought of something and quickly opened the clothes on his stomach. Looking at his smooth belly, he breathed a sigh of relief. Squeak. At this time, the door to the room also opened. It was Kakashi with silver hair, wearing a black mask and a forehead protector covering his left eye. "Naraku, you're awake." Kakashi's tired eyes flashed with joy, but soon became sad again. "How are they doing, sister?" Naraku couldn't help but ask. As he said that, he walked out of the room. When he woke up, he found that this was a hospital. As for the girl beside him, she should be Shizune, when she was a child. Without stopping Naraku, Kakashi walked out of the room with him. Looking at the young figure in front of her, Shizune's eyes flashed with distress. She also knew some information because of Tsunade. Master's wife fell into a coma due to excessive consumption. At this time, Tsunade-sama is treating her, Kakashi said in a deep voice, and the teacher, he died in the battle. After Naraku heard this, he trembled, and Kakashi reached out to support him. "It's still a failure," Naraku thought to himself. "But for you, brother Minato, you succeeded." Controlling his emotions, Naraku and Kakashi came to Kushina's ward together. Naraku felt equally sad about Minato's death, but at this time he had an idea in his mind. The dead can be resurrected here, right? In front of Kushina's ward, Naraku saw a familiar figure. It's Jiraiya. At this time, he looked a little lonely, and his expression was full of sadness. Boom. At this moment, the door to the ward opened, and it was Tsunade. At this time, she frowned slightly. "How is Kushina. Jiraiya asked. Jiraiya also cared about Kushina very much, not to mention Minato's final instructions to him. Although Minato's last few words were silent, Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, still understood basic lip reading. Naraku and Kakashi on the side also looked at Tsunade eagerly. However, Tsunade's performance disappointed them. Tsunade shook her head slightly and said, "My medical ninjutsu can't help her." "What's going on?" Naraku's face changed when he heard this. Tsunade's medical level is the best in the ninja world, if even she is helpless. "Sister, could it be that?" Jiraiya reached out and patted him on the shoulder, signaling him to calm down. Tsunade glanced at Naraku and then continued, "The main reason why my medical ninjutsu was useless is because all the injuries on Kushina's body healed automatically." Naraku reacted after hearing this. Kushina is not dead yet, which means that the tailed beast has been sealed in her body again. Otherwise, she would have died long ago and would not be able to survive until now. Now that the tailed beast is sealed, it is not difficult to heal the wound with the recovery ability of the 9 tails and the special physique of the Uzumaki clan. Then, why is she still unconscious now? Jiraiya asked in a deep voice. Traumatized. The birth plus the removal of the tailed beast, although now again. Tsunade paused here and then continued. The continuous pain caused her to be severely mentally traumatized. Even though her body has recovered, she still won't be able to wake up in a short time. But don't worry too much. Through the examination just now, we found that her spirit is slowly recovering, but it may take a little longer. Naraku breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. Although he couldn't wake up for the time being, it was much better than death. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Naraku bowed slightly and said to Tsunade in front of him, "You kid, why do you still need to be so polite to me?" Tsunade said angrily. "Kushina is my sister after all." Kushina came to Konoha when she was very young. At that time, she had been following Mito Uzumaki, Tsunade's grandmother, so the two of them were very familiar with each other. "Shizune, please stay here to take care of Kushina during this time," Tsunade said to Shizune who had just come over. "Okay, Tsunade-sama." Tsunade then left the hospital. She was planning to leave the village, but stayed in the village temporarily because of Kushina. Jiraiya also stayed in the village for the time being. 3 days later, the early morning sunlight shone on Naraku's face through the window, and then he opened his hazy eyes. Then he stood up dressed in black. First, he went to the next room to take a look at Kushina. After finding that she still hadn't woken up, a trace of disappointment flashed across Naraku's face. In order to make it easier to visit Kushina, Naraku lived directly in the hospital. The facilities here are complete and there will be no inconvenience in life. As the younger brother of the 4th Hokage of Konoha, it is not necessary to have a separate room in the hospital. What a thing. After Shizune checked Kushina's body, he turned and left the hospital. On the street, everyone walked together. Everyone was wearing black clothes and holding white flowers for memorial in their hands. Naraku, as soon as he left the hospital, Kakashi, also dressed in black, stood in front of him. Then the two of them walked towards the funeral site together. Today was the funeral of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Apprenticeship to Jiraiya. Funeral scene. In the middle of the tombstone, there is a photo of a man with golden hair and a gentle smile, like a sun, that can warm people's hearts. This is Minato's tombstone, a man whose speed was the best in the ninja world, a man who in the 3rd Ninja War made people abandon their missions just by hearing his name. He is also the youngest Hokage in Konoha so far, but from today on, he becomes history. Naraku looked depressed, but quickly recovered. "I will make history happen again." Compared with him, Kakashi on the side was very depressed, but Naraku could also understand that he had lost too many people close to him, including his father, companions, and teachers. Kakashi, the 4th generation, sacrificed his life for the village. He protected the village with his life. As his disciple, you must continue his will. At This moment, the third generation wearing a Hokage robe and a slightly older face walked over. Kakashi's expression changed, and he bowed slightly. The third Hokage, compared to his respect, Naraku didn't move at all, as if he didn't see the third generation. Naraku himself has no objections to the third generation. In his previous life, he just didn't like this character very much, but now he doesn't think so. He developed a feeling of resentment towards Sunday. Just like the development of the original work, the third generation also concealed Naruto's identity and ordered that he was not allowed to see him. 3 days have passed since Naruto was born. Except for the first day, he, as an uncle, has not yet seen him. Never met Naruto once. During this period, he also went to see Sunday, but was blocked for various reasons, and he never even saw him in person. Jiraiya was also surprised by this incident, and even had a big fight with the third generation about it, but in the end nothing changed. Although Naraku resented him, he didn't dare to show it, at least not now. Naraku believed that, since the third generation dared not to let him see Naruto, he also dared to do something to him. Naraku's situation in Konoha is not good now. Minato is dead, Kushina is unconscious, and he himself is still young. In the past few days, the ninjas from the Roots have come to invite him several times, just to get him to join the Roots. Naraku had expected this. Danzo had been keeping an eye on him for a long time, because he had the special physique of the Uzumaki clan. Before, when Minato was around, he was still worried. Now, Naraku was thinking about the future development. Ugh. Sunday sighed and said, as long as there are leaves flying, fire will burn, and the shadow of the fire will shine on the village, making new leaves sprout. Naraku, Kakashi, do you understand? Jiraiya-sama, I beg you to accept me as your disciple. Naraku bowed to Jiraiya in front of him in the hospital. Jiraiya's face was slightly startled when he heard this, and then he said casually, oh, you want to become my disciple? What do you want to do? I want to have great power and become a powerful ninja like you. After hearing this, Jiraiya's face changed slightly, and his eyes became serious. Why do you want to have strong power? When he said this, he stared at Naraku carefully, as if expecting to hear something from his ears. Only strong power can protect the people you cherish, and only strong power can prevent tragedy from happening. Peace. I also want to use my own power to pursue peace. Naraku said with firm eyes. Of course, he still had something he was holding back in his heart. Only strong power can take back my nephew. As for the third generation, sooner or later he will take action. It's just that you can't tell Jiraiya this, otherwise you might just kill him on the spot, let alone accept him as your disciple. After hearing Naraku's words, that he wanted to pursue peace, Jiraiya's eyes lit up, and the legend of the Son of Prophecy reappeared in his mind. Before, he had always thought that Minato was the Son of Prophecy, but now Minato is dead. In fact, there is another candidate in Jiraiya's mind, but now he has some doubts about that person. It's him. Looking at Naraku, Jiraiya finally nodded. From today on, you are my disciple, Toad Sennin. Thank you, Jiraiya-sensei. After that, Jiraiya took Naraku to find the third generation. While telling the third generation that Naraku was his disciple, he also knocked on the root. After hearing that Jiraiya had accepted Naraku as his disciple, the third generation was very happy. He turned to Naraku and showed a kind expression like a master. He even agreed that he could visit Naruto regularly, but he could not say anything about Naruto. Their identities cannot be recognized. In his opinion, Naraku became a disciple of Jiraiya, which meant that he was a member of his own sect. Thank you, Lord Third Hokage. Naraku said, pretending to be grateful. After the third Hokage told him to go see Naruto in the Hokage's office. Oh, Naraku, Sunday sighed. Then he raised his hand to signal the Anbu to retreat, and then said with a sincere look on his face, although Naruto is your nephew, he is also a Jinchuriki. If he is used by someone with intentions, it will be a disaster for the village. Do you understand? As he spoke, his eyes narrowed slightly, and an invisible aura radiated out. Old man. Jiraiya frowned and was about to say something, but was shocked by Sunday's look. Although he may not be weaker than the third generation in terms of strength at this time, he is his teacher after all, and Jiraiya always maintains respect for him. but he is equally disappointed with today's third generation. This is a warning. No, this is a threat to me, Naraku thought to himself. However, there was no expression on his face. He just lowered his head and said, "Yes, Hokage-sama, I understand." Seeing him like this, Sande didn't say anything more. "Okay, you guys, please step back. You can visit Naruto once a week," the third generation finally added. After leaving the Hokage's office, Naraku and Jiraiya went to see Naruto. A central area in Konoha village. A pattern consisting of 3.5 months can be seen everywhere here, which is the emblem of the Sarutobi clan. Naruto was currently being taken care of by members of the Sarutobi clan, and Naraku soon saw him in a small room. Naruto was curled up in his swaddling clothes. No one had yet revealed Naruto's identity as a Jinchuriki, so the people here did not exude hostility towards Naruto, and no one harmed him. Naraku breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this scene. He did not step forward to acknowledge Naruto, but just looked at him from a distance. Of course, Naruto probably wouldn't be able to remember him now. Chapter 16 Development Direction. A hidden location in Konoha village. This is a building built underground. Screams can be heard from time to time in the dark, damp room. The Roots, the darkest place in Konoha, is a powerful force controlled by Danzo Shimura. Those who can join the Roots have more or less special abilities. In the silent room, Danzo, who had a white bandage on his head, had a gloomy look on his face, and the anger in his eyes seemed to be turning into substance. "Hiruzen, one day I will prove you wrong," Danzo muttered. "Come here," a voice shouted. A man wearing a cat face mask appeared from the darkness. The man knelt on one knee and said in a respectful tone, "Danzo-sama, temporarily cancel the recruitment of Uzumaki Naraku, and still maintain monitoring of the Jinchuriki Uzumaki Naruto, as well as Uzumaki Kushina." Speaking of this, Danzo paused for a moment, thinking that there were still matters with the Uchiha clan to deal with. "Forget it, I'm a loser. Temporarily withdraw the people who monitor Kushina Uzumaki." Yes, although this person was very confused, people in their roots never needed a reason to perform tasks. Danzo said whatever he said, and then he disappeared from the place in a flash. Even the Uzumaki clan wouldn't be able to survive if their Jinchuriki was taken away, Danzo thought secretly in his heart. But he may not know that the Kyuubi was separately sealed. The next day, Naraku got up early as usual. After an hour of morning exercise, he came to Kushina's ward point at this time. Shizune is doing some daily care for Kushina. Although Kushina is in a coma, her body still needs some nutrients, so now she takes some special nutrient solutions every day to maintain basic body needs. Naraku stayed here for a while and was about to leave when a familiar figure came here with long black hair and a gentle smile on her lips. Uchiha Makoto. Behind her there was a young figure with black hair and 2 deep grooves on his face, making him look mature far beyond his years. Uchiha Itachi. A man who truly inherited the will of fire. There was a several-month-old baby in Itachi's arms, and Naraku knew it was Sasuke without even thinking about it. "Makoto-san." Naraku stood up and called out. Because of Kushina, he was relatively familiar with Makoto. Kushina and she were very close friends. "Naraku." Makoto showed a gentle smile on her face, and then turned to look at Kushina in the ward, with worry in her eyes. "Aren't you awake yet?" In fact, she had wanted to visit Kushina for a long time, but it was only because Sasuke was just born and still needed someone to take care of her, and there were some changes in the clan that she delayed coming here until now. Suddenly Naraku seemed to sense something and turned his head sharply. A man dressed as an Anbu came here. Seeing the person coming, Uchiha Makoto's expression suddenly changed, and then after saying hello to Naraku, she left with Itachi and Sasuke. After she left, the Enbu officer also disappeared. They have already started targeting Uchiha, Naraku thought to himself as he watched Makoto and Itachi leave. In fact, this time the Ninetales rebellion, because Jiraiya was present, did not cause many casualties to Konoha. The biggest loss was the death of Minato. However, due to the sudden death of the 4th generation in the village, Konoha's senior officials had a lot of suspicions about the Uchiha clan, among which several elder advisors headed by Danzo were the most obvious. Politics is a very complex thing. Uchiha Itachi, it seems that we need to have a good relationship in the future. Naraku. was also very interested in this genius who was his own age. Then Naraku also left here. As for Kushina's safety, he was not worried. The appearance of Anbu just now proved that the third generation should already know something. After leaving the hospital, Naraku came to a forest in the village and was about to start training the art of shadow clone. Naraku formed a seal with his hands. Boom, boom. Two white smoke instantly appeared on the field, and when the smoke cleared, two figures exactly like him appeared. Then, under Naraku's command, the two shadow clones went to practice shuriken throwing and some ninjutsu exercises respectively. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, the amount of chakra in his body is very large. Even if he has multiple shadow clones, he can still use it. However, it does not have much effect. After all, he is only 5 years old now, and excessive training will not help him. Conducive to your own growth. Soon the two clones began their training. While Naraku strolled to the river, a young figure was reflected in the clear river water, and Naraku closed his eyes. Sharingan. The next moment, the sharp eyes suddenly opened, and a pair of scarlet pupils appeared, each with a black magatama inside. After opening the Sharingan, Naraku could clearly feel that his vision had changed a lot, and he could observe everything in his sight more carefully. At the same time, Naraku also felt that the chakra in his body was slowly decreasing. Although the amount was not very large, it was indeed consumed. Closing his eyes, Naraku closed his Sharingan. Naraku is very familiar with the Sharingan, one of the most powerful pupil techniques in Hokage. Especially when the Sharingan evolves into the main Gekyo, his power will undergo a qualitative change. Of course, Naraku also knows that, while the main Gekyou Sharingan can bring powerful power to the host, it also has a fatal flaw, which is the decline of eyesight. This is the so-called blood disease. In the original work, Itachi completely destroyed his body because of his frequent use of the main Gekyo Sharingan. Regarding this, Naraku also has plans in his heart, but these are still far away from him. After all, he is just a Magatama Sharingan now, and he is still far away from the main Gekyo. Boom. A burst of white mist appeared, and then a scroll appeared in Naraku's hand. Many unknown techniques were densely recorded on it, which was left to him by Kushina. In addition to recording the various sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan, it also contains methods for practicing the Vajra chain and Kaguya's heart eye. Needless to say, the power of the diamond chain is Kushina's ability to suppress the Kyuubi with this ninjutsu. There is also Kaguya's heart eye, a perception ninjutsu unique to the Uzumaki clan. Its powerful perception ability not only allows the user to perceive chakra fluctuations within a 10-mile radius, but can even use it to infer the number and movement direction of enemies at the same time. When encountering danger, you can also hide your own chakra to gain a chance to escape. Naturally, Naraku would not let go of these two powerful ninjutsu. Seal technique, ninjutsu, and Sharingan. Naraku has temporarily set these three development directions for himself. As for taijutsu, he is too young now, so he does not consider practicing in this area for the time being, but some regular training is still necessary. Chapter 17, 2 years. 2 years later, on a training ground in Konoha village, two figures, one red and one silver, were intersecting with each other. The technique of the great fireball. One of them, a red-haired man who looked young, quickly formed a seal with his hands, then put his right hand to his mouth, and a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 2 meters rushed forward. This person is Uzumaki Naraku. At 7 years old, he looks a little more mature than before. His height of nearly 1.3 meters makes him look like a little adult. Earth escape, earth formation wall. The man opposite didn't panic at all when faced with the huge fireball. After quickly forming seals with his hands, he slapped the ground hard, and an earthen wall with a dog's head carved on it blocked the fireball. Boom. There was a loud noise, and the fireball hit the earth wall hard, and the huge impact caused a burst of smoke. It was blocked. Naraku was not surprised at all by this scene. After all, the person opposite was a genius ninja who became a jonin at the age of 12. Kakashi had take. What's more, Kakashi is much older than himself. Faced with such a person, Naraku doesn't dare to be careless at all. Holding a kunai in each hand, Naraku's eyes were full of solemnity. A gust of breeze blew away the smoke. Suddenly, Naraku's pupils shrank, and Kakashi's figure disappeared from his sight. Naraku didn't dare to be careless and closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, his sense of chakra around him became extremely obvious. It is Kaguya's inner eye. After 2 years of practice, he has initially mastered this top-notch sensory ninjutsu. With him as the center, the perception range of Kaguya's heart eye can cover about 10 meters, which means that within this range, any fluctuations in chakra will be detected by him. He ran down there. Naraku quickly discovered the fluctuations of chakra coming from the ground, and this chakra was very familiar. He knew it was Kakashi without even thinking. With both feet exerting force, Naraku jumped with all his strength, and at the same time, he swung his hands rapidly, and in an instant, several shurikens rushed toward the ground. If you look carefully, you can find that there is a kind of talisman printed with a special spell on these shurikens, which is the detonating talisman. Before Kakashi, who had just emerged from the ground, had time to launch an offensive, these shurikens were already in front of him. Rumble. There was an explosion, and gravel on the ground flew in all directions. However, Naraku still did not relax his vigilance. He did not think that such an attack could hurt Kakashi. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his neck, and a silver figure appeared behind him. It was Kakashi. At this time, he put a kunai on Naraku's neck. "Naraku, you lost." Kakashi's calm tone revealed a hint of joy, as expected of you, Kakashi. You were already prepared for the ambush when you were underground, Naraku murmured, but it's still early to decide whether to win or lose, Brother K. A voice sounded behind Kakashi. At the same time, Naraku in front of Kakashi turned into a puff of smoke with a bang. It's the shadow clone. Kakashi, who was wearing a mask, couldn't tell his expression. He raised his left arm very quickly, pointing. The sound of kunai colliding sounded point at this time. Naraku was standing behind him, and then the two of them flashed and appeared again, pulled away point, looking at the familiar red-haired figure in front of him. Kakashi's eyes flashed with shock. Naraku's strength exceeded his imagination. During the past 2 years, the two would compete every once in a while. At the beginning, he could easily defeat him, but as time went by, Kakashi gradually felt a bit of pressure. Now, it takes a lot of effort for him to defeat Naraku. You must know that Naraku was only 7 years old at this time. Although the opponent was taught by Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, the fact that Naraku could reach this point at this age is enough to show that his talent has surpassed his own. Kakashi felt a little helpless. It seems that I have to work hard, otherwise it would be very shameful to be defeated by you so easily, he thought secretly in his heart. Then the two started a fierce battle again, and of course Kakashi won in the end. Ha ha. The two of them were lying on the ground covered in sweat, breathing heavily. Kakashi, you have a lot of missions recently? Naraku asked. The reason why he asked this was because he hadn't seen each other for more than a month before today. Yeah, Kakashi nodded lightly. 2 years have passed, and Kakashi has also made great achievements in the Enbu. Not long ago, he was promoted to the squad leader of the Anbu by the 3rd generation for his outstanding performance in tasks. The improvement of his position brought him a variety of tasks. Hey, Kakashi, Naraku, you are all here. At this moment, a familiar figure came to the two of them. The person wearing the unique green tights is none other than the future Konoha Blue Beast. Kakashi, let's have a showdown of youth, Gay said energetically. Forehead. Kakashi raised his forehead slightly and said, sorry Gay, I might not be able to do it today. Nani? Kakashi, you forgot what Naraku said. Man, how can you say no? K's eyes burned with the flames of youth. Youth, let us have a duel to prove that our youth really existed. Kakashi, Naraku. Kakashi turned his head and glared at Naraku. You seem to have led Gay astray. Naraku chuckled. Youth means never giving up. Go ahead, Kakashi. In the end, Kakashi was pulled up from the ground by K, and the two had a battle that belonged to men. Siru, Vomit, 1, Meluo, who acted as the referee, gave the order. Kakashi and Gay looked at each other, and Kakashi's forehead was already covered with beads of sweat due to nervousness. Suddenly, the two of them took action at the same time, and their speed surprised Naraku, who was standing beside him. Stone, cloth, lost. Kakashi trembled, looking at his outstretched fist in disbelief. K on the opposite side stretched out his palm. Haha, Kakashi, I won this round. Hey, to celebrate your victory, let's reward yourself with 10,000 push-ups, Ake said. Then he lay down on the ground and started exercising. Looking at the two people in front of him, Naraku raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a smile. Konoha Hospital. Naraku came here after leaving the training ground. 2 years have passed, and Kushina still hasn't woken up. Although Naraku is very worried about this, he has no good solution for the time being. After arriving here, he saw two familiar figures wearing tea green gowns and flowing long white hair. They were none other than Tsunade and Jiraiya. Teacher, Tsunade-sama. Seeing the two of them, a trace of guilt flashed in Naraku's eyes. Because of Kushina, these two people have been in the village for 2 years. Chapter 18. Jiraiya and Tsunade leave the village. Inside Konoha Hospital, Tsunade changed into a white robe, and she once again gave Kushina a comprehensive examination. Outside the ward, there were two figures, one large and one small, ready to leave the village. Naraku murmured. It was learned from Jiraiya that he and Tsunade had made a decision. If there was no change in the results of Kushina's examination this time, the two of them were ready to leave the village. Naraku can understand this. With their personalities, it is considered good that they can stay in Konoha for 2 years. Naraku, I have something to do with Naruto. Jiraiya looked at Naraku with a hint of helplessness in his tone. In fact, whether it is Jiraiya or Tsunade, they also care about and love Konoha very much, but now Konoha has changed its taste in the hands of some people. Ever since Konoha White Fang and Hatake Tsukumo committed suicide, Konoha is now different from before. They cannot understand or agree with some of the actions of the third generation. It is under such conditions that they choose to travel outside the village all year round. For Jiraiya, as Minato's teacher, he couldn't even save his own disciple, so he felt full of guilt. Naraku shook his head slightly, pondered for a while and then said, Teacher, leave Naruto's affairs to me. Sarutobi Hiruzen, haha, you will pay the price sooner or later. Naraku thought to himself. He is different from Jiraiya. After all, Jiraiya is a student of the third generation. No matter how disappointed he is with the third generation, there are still some things he cannot do. But Naraku is different. He doesn't have so many worries. He is forbearing now just to accumulate strength. Squeak. Tsunade walked out of the ward, this time with a smile on her lips. It seems like things are going well, Naraku thought to himself upon seeing this. Sure enough, Tsunade spoke and confirmed her suspicion. Kushina is recovering well. The test results just now show that her traumatized spirit has almost recovered, and it will only take a few months at most to wake up. Naraku-chan, you can rest assured. Tsunade reached out and rubbed Naraku's red hair. Naraku resisted the urge to retreat. In the entire Konoha, only Tsunade would do this to him now. Even Kakashi and Jiraiya rarely did this. Thank you, Tsunade-sama, Naraku said with a bow. I told you, there's no need to be so polite. Tsunade waved her hand casually and then continued. By the way, I will leave the village in the next few days. If Kushina wakes up, let Shizune inform me. I will come back to check her body again. Then, she turned around and left. You really didn't agree. Looking at her back, Naoyuo thought to himself, with a trace of regret flashing in his eyes as one of the three ninjas. Tsunade, Naraku was also very interested in her ninjutsu. The powerful monster power, the Beiheo no Jutsu, that can automatically restore injuries, and the Yin Seal that can store chakra. These are the top ninjutsu in the ninja world. Especially the Hyakuha no Jutsu and the Yin Seal. In Naraku's opinion, these two ninjutsu are no worse than the diamond chain and Kaguya's eye of mind. Some time ago, he asked Jiraiya to help ask Tsunade if he could teach him two ninjutsu. Although he knew that this was a bit overwhelming, the main reason was that the temptation of Yin Seal and Beiheo no Jutsu was too great. Now it seems that Tsunade rejected him. You kid, what are you thinking about? Jiraiya on the side couldn't help but hit him on the head when he saw him like this. As I said last time, you are too young now, and those two ninjutsu are not suitable for you, Jiraiya said with a smile. When you become an adult, Tsunade will teach you those two ninjutsu. Hearing this, Naraku thought of another function of the yin seal, which is to maintain youth forever. In this case, we really have to wait until adulthood, Naraku said with a wry smile as he looked at himself who was only 1.3 meters tall. Then Jiraiya said goodbye to him and left Konoha to begin his creative journey. Sister, wake up quickly. Naruto is already 2 years old. He wants to see you very much. In front of the hospital bed, Naraku looked at Kushina lying on the bed with a hint of sadness in his eyes. 2 years later, he still didn't let the third generation compromise, and he still couldn't recognize Naruto. However, because of his relationship, Naruto's life is not that bad now. The incident of eating expired instant noodles every day like in the original novel has never happened again. Sister, if you knew that Naruto and I hadn't known each other yet, you would probably blame me. So, we still need to speed up the improvement of our strength, Naraku thought to himself. Because Kushina and Naruto are both Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, their situation is not good. Recently, Naraku has felt a lot of strange chakra fluctuations near the hospital. Is it the root? Have you seen something already? By the time Naraku left Konoha, the sky outside had gradually darkened. On the Hokage Rock, Naraku stood on top of the Minato statue, overlooking the entire Konoha village. After setting up a simple isolation barrier, Naraku closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes turned scarlet. In the scarlet pupils, 3 black Magatama slowly rotated. Relying on the mental power that is different from ordinary people, Naraku upgraded his Sharingan to the state of 3 Magatama at only 7 years old. Zeng. 2 pale golden chains stretched out from Naraku's back. Not only has his Sharingan improved significantly, but he has also initially mastered the top ninjutsu of Vajra Chain, but now he can only activate 2 chains, which is still far from the 9 chains that Kushina can rival Kyuubi. He has basically mastered most of the sealing techniques that Kushina left for him. Although those sealing techniques cannot directly increase his combat power, they should have miraculous effects under certain circumstances according to Jiraiya. His current strength has reached the level of a special Jounin. There are 3 levels of Jounin, namely special Jounin, Jounin, and elite Jounin. In particular, Jounin refers to ninjas who have 1 skill. Their overall strength may not reach that of Jounin, but they have 1 or 2 outstanding skills. Jounin is a ninja with relatively strong overall abilities, and Kakashi is at this level now. As for the elite Jounin, they are the strongest combatants below the cage level. The next step is to increase my actual combat experience, Naraku murmured. If we only look at the amount of chakra and the number of ninjutsu mastered, Naraku is not weaker than any elite Jounin now. At only 7 years old, his chakra volume has exceeded that of Kakashi, reaching at least 2 chakras. But Naraku knows that a person's strength is not determined solely by these 2 aspects. If he and Kakashi were to have a life and death battle now, he would have no doubt that he would be the last one to fall. Chapter 19 Joining Anbu and meeting Shizu for the first time. In a secret building in Konoha village, even though it's daytime, the light here is still a little dim, and what's strange is that the people here are all wearing animal masks. Grey vest, animal mask, this is the headquarters of Konoha Anbu. Although it is said to be a base camp, there don't seem to be many people here, and there are only 4 or 5 figures walking around. This is because there are not many Anbu personnel in the first place, and they are basically on missions now, so there are not many people staying here. This is Anbu. Naraku, who had red hair and was wearing a black sportswear, walked in. The sportswear had the mark of the Uzumaki clan printed on it. In order to quickly improve his actual combat capabilities, he chose to join the Anbu, which often performs secret missions. At first, the 3rd generation did not agree to his request. He thought that Naraku was too young now and should go to the Academy of Resistance honestly. However, Naraku only showed part of his strength, which made the 3rd generation change his mind. Not long after arriving here, a figure stood in front of Naraku. The person who came was wearing a white cat face mask, and his hairstyle looked like erected barbs. Could it be? Seeing this familiar outfit, Naraku thought of a person in his mind. You must be Uzumaki Naraku. As he spoke, the man took off the mask on his face. Hello, Uchiha Shizu. Welcome to join. Shizu took off his mask and showed a gentle smile. It is indeed him. He possesses the most powerful Jinjutsu, Shisu, the instant form of another god. I didn't expect that I would be assigned to the same team as him. However, it seems that this is not bad, Naraku thought to himself. His original plan was to form a team with Kakashi, but Sensei told him that Kakashi's team was full and there was no shortage of people for the time being. After hearing the news, Naraku asked the third generation to randomly arrange a team for him. But he didn't expect Sensei to give him a surprise. After the two briefly introduced each other, Shisu took him to receive the equipment that belonged to Anbu. A great vest and a long knife, more than 1 meter long. Then he followed Shisu around, saying that he wanted to familiarize him with the Anbu. It sounds familiar, but in fact there is nothing here. Anbu's tasks are all assigned directly by superiors or the Hokage, so there is no mission hall here. I learned from Shisu that there are currently only 2 of them in their team. Naraku was not surprised by this. Anbu was not like a ninja team, with 1 Jounin and 3 Genin. After all, those who could join the Anbu were very talented. Normal tasks are performed by 1 person, and only some more difficult tasks require several people to perform them together. Oh, by the way, in order to facilitate future missions, I need to briefly understand your strength. After they turned the Anbu over and over, Shisu suddenly turned his head and said, "How about we go and compare notes?" Shisu was very interested in Naraku. It was rare for someone like Naraku to be admitted into the Anbu by the 3rd generation at such a young age. Itachi was the only one in the Uchiha clan who had achieved this. Seeing Naraku, Shisu remembered Itachi, who had just joined the Anbu some time ago. After all, the entire Anbu was about the same age as Naraku and Itachi. "I wonder how your strength compares to Itachi." "Okay." Naraku nodded. Like Shisu, he was also very interested in the genius of the Uchiha clan. Then the two left here and found an open space nearby. "Naraku, be careful," Shisu warned with a smile, and then disappeared in a flash. Naraku's pupils shrank slightly. Is it the teleportation technique? He immediately opened Kaguya's inner eye, and his powerful perception ability covered a range of 10 meters around him. The next moment, he kicked his feet on the ground and retreated quickly while spinning a shuriken forward. Shuriken. Shadow clone jutsu. Call out. In the blink of an eye, a huge number of shurikens rushed forward at great speed. "Were you discovered so soon? This is the 3rd generation's ninjutsu." Shisu's eyes were full of surprise at this time. Naraku gave him a big surprise as soon as he took action. "You can't be looked down upon." The corners of Shisu's mouth raised slightly. The next second, scarlet eyes appeared, and 3 black magatama quickly rotated in the pupils. Then his figure moved quickly, and many disabled people appeared on the field. The extremely dense shuriken was actually dodged by him. Shisu, holding a short silver blade, arrived in front of Naraku in the blink of an eye. The silver blade flashed past and struck him hard. Clang. Naraku used Sukune to block the short blade attack. He is indeed a genius of the Uchiha clan, Naraku thought to himself. From his point of view, Shisu's strength is not weaker than Kakashi at this time, and is even slightly stronger in some aspects. If you just look at talent, Kakashi, who became a jonin at the age of 12, will definitely not be worse than anyone else, but now his strength is indeed growing very slowly. After all, he does not have the blood of the Uchiha clan, and the Sharingan has consumed him too much. Fire release, a powerful fireball technique. At this moment, Shisu formed a seal with one hand, his mouth slightly bulged, and then he blew fiercely, and a huge fireball hit Naraku directly. Boom. The fireball burned the air, and the surrounding temperature increased a lot. Wind escape, wind cut. Naraku reacted very quickly. He first took a step back, and then released a ninjutsu with the same hand seal. Kazukiri is a seal level ninjutsu. Several small wind blades split the huge fireball. I've even mastered the wind release. Zisu's eyes lit up. Itachi, it seems you are about to meet your match, he thought to himself. In his opinion, Naraku's current performance is no weaker than Itachi's. Even if the two of them really fight, Shisu feels that Itachi has little chance of winning. Then he flashed and disappeared again. Again. Naraku didn't dare to be careless about this. Kaguya's eyes were always open. For speedy ninjas like Shisu, once they seize the opportunity, the victory or defeat may be in an instant. Coming so fast, Naraku suddenly turned around and looked behind him. Under the perception of Kaguya's inner eye, Shisu's chakra appeared behind him. Fire. Release. The Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique. Several fireballs the size of human heads appeared in the sky and fell towards where Naraku was. Wind. Release. Just when Naraku was about to use ninjutsu, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck, and a silver short blade was already placed on his neck. A cold touch came. Okay, Naraku, that's it for today. I already know a little bit about your strength, Shisu's voice sounded. Oh, really? Naraku raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and then with a bang, his body turned into a ball of white mist. Chapter 20 Air Level Mission, Jun Nakata. Late at night, Naraku walked into the room after washing. After sparring with Shisu during the day, he also had a simple understanding of the other party's strength. Preliminary estimates indicate that Shisu's current strength has reached the level of an elite jounin. Both ninjutsu and physical skills are outstanding, especially his teleportation technique. Its speed is so fast that it even makes Kaguya open. In his state of mind, he was a little overwhelmed. Although Kaguya's inner eye can sense the opponent's position, his body cannot keep up with the opponent's speed. You're still too young, Naraku murmured. The next day, as usual, Naraku went to visit Kushina. After waking up looking at the red-haired woman lying on the hospital bed, Naraku could clearly sense that Kushina's condition was getting better day by day with her powerful perception. Just like Tsunade said, maybe she would wake up soon. Thinking of this, Naraku smiled, and then he left the hospital. Just as he was about to go to Anbu, a handsome figure stood in front of him. The cat face mask, the familiar barbed hairstyle, the person coming, was none other than Uchiha Shisu. This is a mission, Naraku asked tentatively. Shisu nodded slightly when he heard the words. There is an escort mission that we need to carry out together. It takes half an hour to prepare. I will wait for you at the entrance of the village. With that said, Shisu handed him a scroll, and then he left here. Naraku returned to the hospital with the scroll. After carefully reading the contents of the scroll, he disposed of the scroll directly. Although this was his first mission, he still understood some rules. Regardless of his own safety or the interests of the village, any mission information could not be leaked. Is it just an escort mission? After reading the content on the scroll, Naraku frowned slightly. The mission this time was to escort a businessman named Nakata-jun and his caravan from Stone City in the country of fire to a small town in the country of wind. Due to the long distance, it would take at least more than half a month. Only then can it be completed. There is nothing strange about the mission content. It is almost the same as a normal escort mission. But what makes Naraku confused is that the level of this mission is actually A level. You must know that most of the general escort missions are C level. If there are ninjas involved, they will be defined as B level. As for A level, let alone A level, generally, A level missions will 100% involve ninjas, and they are very likely to occur. Probably a jounin. It seems that this mission is not easy, Naraku thought to himself. After a simple analysis, Naraku was not too worried. After all, he was not the only one on this mission, and Shisu was the protagonist of this mission. Saying that even if he really encounters any danger, he can still protect himself. As long as he does not encounter a strong shadow level person, Naraku feels that he has nothing to panic. Even if he is really unlucky and encounters some troublesome beings, he is confident that he can protect himself. He escaped wholeheartedly. Then Naraku came to Kushina's room and carefully checked the surrounding barriers. It was related to Kushina's safety, and he did not dare to be careless in the slightest. Naraku felt that the barrier warning was not enough, so he pressed one hand on the ground and said, "Psychic." With a bang, a burst of white smoke appeared. After the smoke dissipated, a small red toad appeared here. It's Naraku. What do you want from me? Toad-yan opened his hazy eyes, as if he had just woken up. Well, it's still the same as before. Naraku smiled helplessly. After becoming a disciple of Jiraiya, he naturally signed a psychic contract with Myomu Mountain, and the toad flame was the toad he channeled for the first time. Although Toad-yan doesn't look very big, Naraku knows that his strength is not weak at all. According to what he said, Gamabunta seems to be his cousin or something. Moreover, this guy also has an extremely obvious characteristic, laziness. Toad-yan's biggest hobby is sleeping. If it's nothing, just When Todian opened his mouth to say something, Naraku spoke quickly. I have something to do, and I have to leave the village for a few days. During this time, please stay here and watch my sister. Naraku was really afraid that this guy would run away before he even spoke point. Although Todian was reluctant, he finally agreed after Naraku promised not to disturb his sleep in the future. Naraku breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. If Todian didn't agree, it would be really troublesome. Although there are other toads in Miyaboki Mountain, they are either too big and inconvenient like Bunter, or they are too weak. Todian was just right, and then he found Shizune, explained a few words, and left here. After he left, Todian lay on the edge of Kushina's bed, and closed his eyes. After a while, snoring sounded in the room. At the entrance of the village, Naraku came here, and gathered with Shizu, and the two left Konoha together. Stone City is a small town in the Land of Fire, not very far from Konoha village. In addition, the two of them were not slow, and finally arrived at their destination before dark. At Shizu's suggestion, the two used a simple transformation technique, pretending to be two middle-aged men, and then found a hotel in the town to stay. Although the transformation technique can easily be seen by other ninjas, it can still conceal it from ordinary people in the town. A night of silence. After waking up, the two people set off directly to find Nakata, the initiator of the mission. According to the location recorded in the scroll, they quickly found the target point in a tavern. A middle-aged man wearing black clothes and about 1.8 meters tall was sitting there having a drink. This person is Jun Nakata, the initiator of this mission. At this time, he was sitting there alone, toasting and drinking. After drinking a glass of sake, he looked contented. After identifying the target, he stayed where he was, and moved forward from Shizu to make contact with the opponent. Naraku, on the other hand, hid outside the tavern. They did this to prevent any accidents from happening. Although this possibility was very small. In the tavern, Shizu dressed as an ordinary person was already standing in front of Nakata-jun. There didn't seem to be anything unexpected about the visitor, Nakata-jun, but his eyes flashed with a hint of unnoticeable sadness after looking at Shizu's slightly younger face. A ninja from Konoha. Well, you must be the client this time, Jun Nakata. Yes. Nakata-jun nodded, and then continued. As expected of Konoha, such a young ninja can be sent to perform air-level tasks. Hearing this slightly probing tone, Shizu had no reaction. He was used to this kind of thing after completing many air-level missions. Chapter 21 Stone Ninja Village, the tricky part of the mission. Since you are already here, let's go to the caravan together. After all, the employer needs the goods very urgently this time. Outside the tavern, Jun Nakata, dressed in black, said to Shizu. Although he was a little worried about whether the young-looking Shizu could help him complete his plan, he had no better way at this time. Ninjas of Konoha, don't let me down. Wait a minute, I still have a teammate, Shizu said, stopping Nakata-jun who was about to walk forward, and then he reached out and quietly made a gesture behind his back. Teammates. After hearing this, Nakata-jun showed a smile on his face. Just when he was about to say something, Naraku, who had red hair and carried a long knife on his back, appeared in his sight. Teammate, kid. Looking at Naraku's young body, Jun Nakata's mouth twitched slightly, wanting to say something, but in the end he remained silent. Forget it. It's always good to have one more person. Even a genin has a certain fighting capacity, he thought in his heart. Then he walked forward, and Naraku and the others followed him. At this time, Naraku also took the opportunity to carefully look at Jun Nakata in front of him, but he soon discovered something was wrong. Under his perception, there was a strong energy fluctuation in the opponent's body. This is a ninja, and a jounin. The expression hidden under the mask changed slightly, and Naraku turned his head to report the news to Shizu. That's not right. Looking at Shizu's calm expression, Naraku instantly figured out something. With Shizu's strength and experience, he could still tell the identity of Nakata-jun even without using the Sharingan. Naraku shook his head slightly, and then quietly followed Nakata-jun. As expected, I have already seen it. As expected of the Uzumaki clan, Shizu said with an imperceptible smile on his lips. He had long seen the identity of Jun Nakata, and the reason why he did not remind Naraku was to give him a small test. Naraku's performance did not disappoint him, and Shisu felt that even he himself might not be able to do this at his age. Uzumaki Naraku is truly a genius. Naraku and the two walked behind Jun Nakata for a while. None of the three of them spoke a word along the way. Soon they came to a remote courtyard. It looked like it was Jun Nakata's own property. There were two guards at the door. Dressed people were there to keep watch. "You are back, sir." When the guard saw that it was Nakata-jun who had returned, he immediately saluted respectfully. Nakata-jun waved his hand slightly and then walked in with Shisu and the other two. "By the way, tell the others to get ready. We will set off immediately. Let's go. Has the ninja you invited arrived?" The guard looked confused and then turned his attention to Shisu and the two. "Could it be them?" The guard looked at Shisu's young face and Naraku's young body with a trace of doubt on his face. "Well, these two are the ninjas sent by Konoha. Hurry up and get ready." Nakata-jun waved his hand and urged, "Okay, sir." Although they were doubtful, the guards didn't dare to say anything when they heard Nakata-jun do speak, and then they went to inform others. Naraku and the two followed Nakata-jun and walked into a room in the other courtyard. "Mr. Nakata, does this mission require you to escort the caravan to the Kingdom of Wind?" At this moment, Shisu suddenly spoke, staring directly at Nakata-jun with his sharp eyes. Jun Nakata was stunned when he heard this, then nodded. "Yes, originally, I was going to ask the ninjas from Sunagakure village to solve this task, but I don't know why, but they didn't take it. That's why I asked you Konoha, perhaps out of fear that Shisu might have some misunderstanding." Nakata-jun hurriedly explained. Sunagakure, or thought flashed across Naraku's face. Is this the time? Naraku thought of the tailed beast of Sunagakure village, one-tailed Shukaku. In his memory, it seemed that the one-tailed Jinchuriki Fenfu died during this time period. Of course, he was just guessing and not sure. As for Shisu, he seemed to already know something, and didn't show any surprise. Then Shisu spoke to Jun Nakata to confirm some things about the mission point at this time. Naraku also knew why this mission was rated A level. The first was that Jun Nakata paid a lot of money, even more than ordinary A-level missions. The second is that his batch of goods has been targeted point. According to what he said, their caravan makes money by transporting some special laws. Although this kind of ore is not very rare, the profit is still very considerable. Point. It was precisely because of this profit that their goods were targeted by some small ninja villages. Stone Ninja Village. They are the ones who robbed my first few batches of goods, Jun Nakata said with an angry look on his face. Stone Ninja Village. Shisu muttered. Point. He didn't know much about Stone Ninja Village. He only knew that it was a small ninja village on the border of the Kingdom of Wind and that there were not many ninjas. "Ninja-sama, this mission will trouble you too," Nakata-shun said and bowed deeply towards the two of them. "Mr. Nakata, you don't have to be like this," Shisu said, a little surprised. "Since we in Konoha have accepted this mission, we will naturally do our best to complete it. Mr. Nakata, please rest assured. Thank you very much, Ninja-sama." Then Nakata-jun walked out of the room to make preparations before departure. Shisu and Naraku stayed in the room to rest for a while. Naraku looked at Nakata-jun's leaving figure. He felt that this mission might not be what the other party said. Although the Stone Ninja Village was not big, it was a ninja village after all. If it is true that the Stone Ninja Village will rob their goods as he said, then Sunagakure village will never sit idly by and ignore it. After all, it is near the Kingdom of Wind, and the Stone Ninja Village's actions will also affect them. The reputation of the Kingdom of Wind. He felt that there must be something else fishy here. As for Shisu, his face was expressionless at this time, and he didn't know what he was thinking. An hour later, the caravan had been organized, and Toshiya Nakata sent someone to notify the two of them. "Ninja-sama, we are leaving." "Okay." Shisu nodded, then stepped out of the room. Naraku followed him. This mission was a big experience package for him. The purpose of ninjas doing missions is firstly to obtain money, and secondly to accumulate practical combat experience. Only actual combat is a standard to test one's strength. Only through actual combat can one's strength improve faster. "Let's go." Jun Nakata gave the order from the front of the caravan, and a group of about 20 people set off in a mighty manner. "Stone Ninja Village. Haha, it's time to end the grudge between us." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Hiding Identity. On the way, Jun Nakata's caravan was quickly heading in one direction. Shizu and Naraku sat cross-legged on the cargo box, looking around vigilantly, always on guard against accidents, especially Naraku. It was his first mission after all, so he didn't dare to slack off at all. Although relying on the blood of Uzumaki and Uchiha, his strength has grown rapidly, but Naraku knows that these two can only raise his starting point. As for the upper limit, more depends on his own efforts, just like the Uzumaki clan. Although they had a physique that was different from ordinary people, in the end they were easily wiped out by others, and only a few people remained in the ninja world. Not to mention the Uchiha clan. There are not even 1,000, but 800 Uchiha clan members in existence. Among them, there must be hundreds at least who have opened the Sharingan. However, how many of these people have reached the strength of Jounin? Therefore, although bloodline is very important, one's strength cannot be judged solely by bloodline. Just like now, accumulating experience in tasks is also part of growing strength. Naraku was very energetic, and he would not let go of any opportunity for growth. Just like now, although his eyes seemed to be looking somewhere randomly, in fact, his perception directly covered the entire caravan. Every once in a while, he would release part of his chakra to sense the things around him. Although he would lose part of his chakra in doing so, Naraku didn't really care. It's just chakra, that's what he lacks the most. Of course, he did not use Kaguya's heart eye. Naraku would not take the initiative to open Kaguya's heart eye unless necessary. He did not want to become dependent on it. Moreover, by releasing chakra to sense things around him, he can also exercise his control over chakra. Chakra amount is one thing, but chakra control is another. Whether it is stimulating ninjutsu, sealing techniques, forbidden techniques, or medical ninjutsu, these all have strict requirements for chakra control. Zissou on the side noticed Naraku's movements, and couldn't help but nodded secretly. In front of the caravan, Jun Nakata seemed to sense something, and looked towards Naraku. Konoha deserves to be the leader of the 5 great ninja villages. Geniuses are really endless, although he has never practiced sensory ninjutsu. His strength has reached the Jonin level after all, and he can still detect the fluctuations of chakra in the air. The caravan continued to move forward, and the day passed quickly. Fortunately, they encountered no accidents this day. Except for Nakata-jun, everyone else in the caravan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. They don't have the strength of Jounin like Nakata-jun. Most of them are just ordinary people with good skills. If they really encounter any accident, then it's no different than a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Okay, let's all rest where we are, and wait until daybreak, before we continue setting off, Nakata-jun said loudly. Then the group began to rest. Naraku and Shizu turns to rest for a while, after setting up a perception barrier around them. There was nothing to say all night, and soon the sky turned white, and the sun slowly rose from the east. After some preparation, the caravan set off again. After another day like this, a group of them arrived at the border of the country of fire. Everyone, cheer up. As long as we pass through the woods ahead, we will be very close to the kingdom of wind. Nakata-jun spoke loudly, and his words cheered everyone up. Master, ninja, our previous goods were robbed in that forest. Maybe the people from the Stone Ninja village have set up an ambush there. Jun Nakata walked up to Shizu and the two, and said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Zissou frowned slightly, and began to think. Like Naraku, he also saw the anomalies in this mission, especially Nakata-jun's words, which may not be somewhat true. It's just that, now that they have taken over this task, it is impossible to give up now. In addition, he mainly wants to take Naraku to practice this time. If he gives up now, it will not be worth the gain, and after getting along with each other these days, he has a good impression of Nakata-jun. Although he is a ninja, he is still very kind to the ordinary people in the caravan. This can be seen from the attitude of those people towards him. You can tell After pondering for a while, Shisu said, Mr. Nakata, please rest assured that, if the Stone Ninja village will appear here as you said, we will not sit idly by and ignore it. However, Shisu's eyes changed as he spoke, and his sharp eyes fell on Nakata-jun again. If I find out that you have any impure motives, we may abandon the mission at any time. Shisu spoke with a stern warning. Don't worry, Ninja-sama, we are really just traders transporting goods. Jun Nakata lowered his head and said in a respectful tone. Okay, if that's the case, let's keep going. After getting the answer he wanted, Jun Nakata turned around and walked to the front of the caravan. At this time, a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a stern look. The caravan continued to set off. Shisu on the shelf calmly took off the forehead protector from his forehead. As for Naraku, he had already put the Konoha forehead protector into the scroll because he found it troublesome. Naraku can also understand Shisu's behavior. After all, the third ninja war has just passed. In addition, the fourth Hokage, Namake's Minato died in the battle. At Tsunade, Jiraiya left the village, and now Konoha, but he was weak as never before. So what Konoha desires most now is to maintain peace. Although Stone Ninja Village is just a small ninja village, it is close to the Kingdom of Wind after all. In order to avoid unnecessary troubles, hiding one's identity is undoubtedly the most correct choice. An accident may happen next. Pay attention to your own safety, Shisu whispered to Naraku. Naraku nodded, then stopped releasing chakra. While releasing chakra to sense the outside world, it is also easy to reveal one's position and alert others. Sitting cross-legged, Naraku adjusted his state and mentality. To be honest, he was still a little nervous at this time. After all, it was his first mission, but in addition to being nervous, there is more of a kind of excitement. Just like seeing the scenes in anime in the previous life, which can't help but make people feel a little passionate. The caravan slowly drove into the woods, with tall trees standing all around. The ground in the woods was somewhat uneven, and although the caravan had slowed down, the goods on the shelves were still bumpy, but this had no impact on Shisu and Naraku. Suddenly, the woods became silent for a moment. Chapter 23 Actual Combat, Decisiveness. In the woods, the masked Shisu came to the caravan very quickly and said in a deep voice, there is an ambush ahead. Everyone, stop. The people in the caravan also reacted very quickly and stopped immediately. Everyone looked heavy. They all knew that what happened next was very dangerous, and they would lose their lives if they were not careful. Naraku also put on a mask and quietly stood behind the caravan. The two guards behind him were trembling. Suddenly, an unusually obvious aura emerged from the woods. The opponent seemed to have no intention of hiding his figure. A total of 8 figures slowly walked out of the woods and surrounded the entire caravan. Oh, I actually hired help, a middle-aged man with a scar on his face said with amusement. Nakata, I didn't expect you to come in person this time. Nomura, Nakata, gritted his teeth and said the other person's name. At this time, he looked at the person who just spoke with hatred on his face. Haha, now that you're here, don't leave. Nomura, the scarred man who just spoke, continued to speak. His eyes were also filled with hatred when he looked at Nakata. It's time to settle the grudge between us. Sure enough, Naraku, who was behind the caravan, also heard the conversation between the two. It was obvious that the two had known each other for a long time. From this, it could be seen that Jun Nakata's purpose of inviting them over might not be so simple. However, we have reached this situation, and it is impossible to give up the mission now. We can only continue. Do it. Suddenly, the scarred man shouted, and then he held a long knife in his hand and rushed forward at high speed. Almost at the same time, several other people also took action. Aha, boom, boom. Although they are fast, there are people faster than them. Just when Scarman took action, Shisu had already arrived in front of him with a short blade in hand. The silver white blade tore a hole in the air and slashed towards the scarred man. Clang. The scarred man hurriedly blocked the blow with his long knife. The huge force shocked his arm, and he almost missed the blow with the long knife. Escape. Earth Dragon Bullet. Just when Shisu wanted to continue his attack, several basketball-sized mud bombs came towards him. It was the man next to the scarred man who took action. Rumble. Mud bombs hit the ground hard, setting off a puff of smoke. After the smoke cleared, Shisu's figure had long disappeared. Clang. The sound of weapons clashing came again. It was Shisu. At this time, he had come to the other side and blocked someone again. Damn Nakata, he actually hired such a helper, the scarred man said with anger on his face, and a stern look flashed in his eyes. No matter who it is, you have to stay here today, he said, holding a long knife and rushing towards Shisu. The man next to him followed. After observing the current situation point on this trip, their Stone Ninja village sent almost all the masters, a total of 4 Jounin and 4 Chunin point. These are the top forces of the village, and the loss of any one of them is a huge loss to the Stone Ninja village point at this time. The man Shisu stopped was just a Chunin. It was visible to the naked eye that he had fallen into a disadvantage. If he did not rescue him, he would be defeated in an instant. And through the brief fight just now, he also judged that Shisu was extraordinary. He believed that Shisu's strength must be higher than that of Scarman, and Scarman was almost the strongest among them, so he can't have any accidents. Soon he and the scarred man rushed over and fought with Shisu again. Point Nakata on the other side also fought with the remaining 2 Jounin. As for Naraku, 2 shadow clones were separated from the beginning. With the assistance of the shadow clones, he blocked the remaining 3 Chunin alone. Go to hell, kid. Water escapes, water rushes into waves. A young man had a ferocious smile on his face and quickly formed seals with his hands, and then a huge wave of water hit Naraku. His name is Kawakami, and he is the most outstanding person among the younger generation in the Stone Ninja village, but he has the strength of a Chunin in his early 20s in a small place like Stone Ninja village. It is quite good to have such an achievement. He is even called a genius in the village. Point today was his first time participating in such a group task, so he seemed a little excited. Wind escape, great breakthrough. Naraku's body exerted force on his legs, and he took a few steps back. At the same time, he quickly formed seals with his hands. The corners of his mouth bulged slightly, and then a strong wind spurted out of his mouth. Under the violent hurricane, the water waves spread out and lost their attack power. How is that possible? Kawakami was stunned. Shuchangbo was relatively strong among the ninjutsu he mastered, but he didn't expect it to be cracked like this. However, Naraku didn't give him much time to react. As soon as he raised his hand, a shuriken ripped through the air and rushed towards Kawakami. Call out. The sound of cracking in the air made Kawakami react. When he saw that it was just a shuriken, he relaxed his vigilance again and held a kunai across his chest. For ninjas, shurikens are not very lethal. Even a genin can resist 1 or 2 shurikens. Kawakami has this kind of mentality at this time, but he may not know that there is another ninjutsu in this world called Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Suddenly Naraku, who had formed seals on his hands, shouted. I saw the extremely fast rotating shuriken. 1 turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4. In just the blink of an eye, hundreds of shuriken appeared on the field. Point call out, call out, call out. There were constant sounds of breaking the air on the field. Kawakami, another Chunin who was fighting Naraku's shadow clone not far away, saw this scene and shouted loudly. At the same time, the blue light in his body surged, chakra burst out, and he ran at high speed in the direction of Kawakami. Point without his reminder, Kawakami also reacted at this time, retreating rapidly while also waving the kunai in his hand quickly. Point clang, clang, the sound of metal colliding kept coming, and kunai blocked shurikens one after another. Point puff. Suddenly, a splash of blood spattered on Kawakami's leg. Although he tried hard to resist, there were too many shurikens, and he was eventually hit in the thigh by one. Well, Kawakami endured the pain and continued to resist, but his movement slowed down a lot because of the injury. Point puff, puff. At the same time, 2 more shurikens hit his body. Point looking at the bright red blood on Kawakami's body, Naraku's mood fluctuated a bit at this time. This was his first actual combat with a real ninja. Although it was not as difficult as imagined, he still felt a depressed mood. A trace of hesitation flashed through Naraku's heart, but it was only for a moment. He knows better than anyone else the cruelty of the ninja world, where the weak eat the strong. This is a world where the big fish eats the small fish. If Naraku is not decisive enough, he will be eaten. Point at this time, Kawakami was at the end of his strength. More and more shurikens were pierced into his body, and blood had covered his body. Chapter 24 The grievances between the two sides. Boom. Naraku kicked the ground with his legs, exerted force, and rushed forward at a high speed. His target was the Chunin who came to rescue Kawakami. As for Kawakami, he had fallen to the ground at this time. Judging from the blood all over his body, he was dead or disabled. Kawakami, the Chunin who rushed over, saw the expression of sadness and anger on his face. Then this feeling of grief and indignation turned into anger. He focused his gaze on Naraku's body, his eyes full of murderous intent. Then he rushed over with a kunai in hand. Naraku didn't care about this. Under his control, the two shadow clones went to besiege another Chunin, while he bullied himself and fought with this person. Clang, clang. The sound of kunai colliding kept coming, and sparks appeared in the air. Although Naraku did not pay too much attention to the practice of taijutsu due to his age, compared with his mastery of ninjutsu, his taijutsu can only be regarded as average. But with his flexible body and a large amount of chakra, he was able to suppress the opponent with just his physical skills at this time. Naraku's body was flashing with light blue light, and chakra was almost covering his whole body. In this state, the power of any of his physical attacks would be greatly enhanced. At this time, Naraku regarded the other party as a sparring partner, otherwise he would have been dealt with long ago. The remaining Chunin also gradually fell into a disadvantage due to the cooperation of the two shadow clones. Although Shisu on the other side faced two Jounin and one Chunin at the same time, he still seemed to be able to do it with ease, and he didn't even open his Sharingan. After all, the Stone Ninja Village is just a small ninja village, and their Jounin strength is at most about the same as Konoha's special Jounin. For Shisu, for a ninja of that level, not only 1 against 5, but 1 against 3 is no problem. After noticing that Naraku's side had stabilized the situation, Shisu was even less anxious at this time, and even gave up the attack on his own initiative, and just relied on his extraordinary speed to fight with a few people. However, although he was not in a hurry, the scarred men on the other side were different. Who is this guy? How can he be so strong? Looking at Shisu's relaxed look, the scarred man also realized the gap in strength at this time. Nomura. At this moment, the man behind the scarred man spoke. How about forgetting it? This matter is ours after all. Forget it. The scarred man smiled bitterly upon hearing this. Jiro, ever since we accidentally killed Nakato-Sono, this matter will never be forgotten. Jiro was the one who just spoke, and he fell silent when he heard this. Nakato-san is Nakato-jun's son. A year ago, Nakato-Sono passed through here with a group of caravans, and at that time Nomura and Jiro were out on a mission. After the two sides met, Nakato-Yuan thought they were robbers who came to rob goods, so he attacked them without saying a word. Naturally, Nomura and the others will not sit still and wait for death, so the result can be imagined. Although Nakadanon's strength is not weak, he has also reached the level of Chunin point, but there was still a long way to go compared to the two Nomuras, and with 1 against 2, Nakato-Sono died under their swords. At that time, Nomura planned to kill the rest of the caravan as well, but was stopped by Jiro. Later, when Jun Nakato learned that his son had been killed, he was furious. How could he not avenge his son's murder? So after he learned that someone from the Stone Ninja Village killed his son, he directly sneaked into the Stone Ninja Village alone. At that time, Nomura, Jiro and several other Jonin in the village happened to be out on missions, and there was only one person in the village. An elderly Jonin stayed behind. In the Stone Ninja Village, Nakato-shun not only killed the Jonin, but also killed several young people, and unfortunately, Nomura's son was among them. This is how the feud between them ended. In fact, after killing those people in the Stone Ninja Village, Nakato-jun's anger had mostly subsided. In the final analysis, he was just a businessman. Although he had some strength, it was not enough to compete with a village point, so he didn't think about continuing to take revenge later. But Nomura didn't want to let him go like this, because Nakato-jun himself has considerable strength, and he has been living in the land of fire. Nomura and the others, who have never been able to find an assassination opportunity, chose another way of revenge, which was to rob their goods. The grudge between the two parties continued like this. Nomura's actions greatly damaged Nakato-shun's interests, so he thought of hiring ninjas to escort the goods. Of course, he also had selfish motives. He wanted to use the help of Shizu and the others to solve the troubles in the Stone Ninja Village at once. On the other side, the two remaining Jonin of Stone Ninja Village gradually suppressed Nakata-shun with the cooperation of each other. But after noticing the situation on Nomura's side, the two of them couldn't be happy. If we really want to talk about it, the strength of the two of them is not as good as Nakata-shun. They just have an advantage in numbers. Even so, it is unrealistic for them to win over Jun Nakata in a short time. Moreover, it wasn't just Nomura's side. They also saw Naraku easily suppressing the two Chunin, as well as Kawakami, who fell to the ground. For a moment, several people in the Stone Ninja Village fell into a dilemma. Compared with them, Nakata-shun's had a different mood at this time. Looking at the people in the Stone Ninja Village in front of him, although he still felt hatred in his heart, it was not that strong anymore. He only felt hatred towards the person who killed his son with his own hands. Nomura's hatred is stronger. Although Shizu didn't know the specific grudges between them, he didn't want to be a tool for others' revenge, so he didn't kill Nomura and the others. Otherwise, with his strength, he would have been able to deal with these people long ago. As expected, Naraku was not surprised by Shizu's actions. Shizu is a truly peace-loving person, a person who has inherited the true will of fire. If that's the case, let's end it as soon as possible. Suddenly, Naraku's right leg exerted force, and a gust of wind was set off at such a speed that his right leg tore through the air and fell directly on the person fighting him like a sharp axe. Boom. In just an instant, the man flew backwards like a cannonball. Puff. A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Then he turned his head and glanced at the man who was surrounded by the shadow clone. After shaking his head slightly, he walked straight towards Zisu. His own strength has reached the level of a special Jounin, and the Chunin of this small ninja village no longer poses any challenge to him. Not bad. Shizu smiled upon seeing this. Whether it was strength or other aspects, Naraku's performance satisfied him very much. Everyone in the Stone Ninja Village was shocked when they saw this scene. Because Naraku was wearing a mask, they couldn't tell his age, so in their eyes Naraku was a shorter expert. Chapter 25. The grudge ends and enters the Kingdom of Wind. In the woods, the strength of Naraku and Shizu shocked everyone in the Stone Ninja Village. Except for Kawakami, who had died in the battle, the others all gathered together at Nomura's signal. Of course, this is why Nomura saw that Shizu didn't want to kill them. At this time, Nomura's eyes were full of regret. It would have been better if I hadn't met Nakata-san at that time, he thought to himself. But there is no regret medicine in this world. Looking at the other people in Stone Ninja Village and Kawakami's body, Nomura seemed to have made some kind of decision in his heart, and his eyes became firm. He took a step forward and looked directly at Jun Nakata, who had just arrived. Nakata, I killed your son. How about we make a clean break between you and me? Nomura is betting. Judging from Shizu's performance just now, he knows that the other party will not help Nakata kill them all, so he wants to handle this matter alone. A trace of hesitation flashed in Nakata-jun's eyes when he heard this. Although the situation at this time seemed to be his side having the upper hand, he knew that this was only on the surface. Ignoring Nomura, Nakata-shun looked at Naraku and the other two and asked tentatively, Ninja-sama, what do you think? Shizu looked at him with a half smile. Mr. Nakata, our mission is only to protect your caravan. Naraku remained silent and did not express any opinions. That's it. After receiving Shizu's reply, a trace of disappointment flashed in Nakata-jun's eyes, but he soon felt relieved. At this point, his intention to use Zisu and the others for revenge has already been revealed. Even if Zisu and the others give up on the mission, it is normal. Nakata-jun took a step forward with a kunai in hand, looking at Nomura in front of him. His eyes gradually became sharp. Then, let's solve it the ninja way. As he spoke, he threw the kunai in his hand towards the opponent, and at the same time, began to form seals with his hands. Bang! Nomura easily blocked kunai's attack with a sword in his hand. Earth escape, Earth Dragon Bullet. Suddenly, Jun Nakata shouted, and an Earth Dragon's head quickly rose from the ground. The Earth Dragon's mouth opened wide, and mud bombs were blasted towards Nomura. Earth escape, Earth formation wall. Nomura's reaction was equally fast. After forming seals with both hands, he pressed one hand on the ground. Soon an earth wall rose up, to block the attack of the mud bomb. Rumble. The collision between the mud bombs and the earth wall set off a puff of smoke, and at the same time the two sides started fighting again. Clang, clang. The sound of metal colliding kept coming. Although the battle between the two seemed evenly matched, Naraku felt in his heart that the outcome had already been decided. The loser in this battle must be Nomura. On the surface, there is not much difference in strength between the two. Toshi Nakata has a little more chakra, but in general, that little bit of chakra cannot determine the outcome. Pointed as he and Shizuhu really. Although they will not help Nakata-jun kill everyone in the Stone Ninja village, there is one thing that must be guaranteed, and that is Nakata-jun's safety. He can be injured, but he must not die, otherwise their mission will be considered a failure. After all, Nakata-jun is also a member of the caravan. Just like Shizu at this time, his attention has always been on the battle between the two, and his body is maintaining a state of accumulating energy. Naraku knows that, if Nakata-shun really loses to Nomura, he will definitely fight for the second time. He saved the other party in a short time. The two fought quickly, and the result was just as Naraku expected. Nakata-shun won with minor injuries, while Nomura covered his neck and fell in a pool of blood. Jiro, the village will be handed over to you from now on. After these words flashed through his mind, Nomura completely lost consciousness. The faces of the remaining people in Stone Ninja Village were all filled with sadness, and the youngest among them was already in his 30s. For the sake of the village, they would not think about revenge at all, and they would not dare to do so, at least not now. Grown ups. At this moment, Jiro took a step forward and stood up. Facing Naraku, he bent down and said respectfully, "Thank you, sir, for not killing me." Zisu waved his hand slightly. "We are just performing a mission. If your grudges have been settled, leave here quickly." Hearing this, Jiro bowed again, then set his sights on Nakata-jun, and said in a hoarse voice, "Mr. Nakata, Stone Ninja Village will not hinder your business in the future. I hope the grievances between us will end here." Nakata-jun nodded lightly and said nothing. In fact, he was relieved the moment he killed Nomura, and he had finally avenged Nakata-jun. As for the Stone Ninja Village, as long as it did not hinder his business in the future, he would naturally not take the initiative to provoke them. Then Jiro took the bodies of Nomura and Kawakami, and left here with others. From beginning to end, they never said they wanted to avenge Kawakami. "Thank you too, sir." Just after they left, Jun Nakata bowed deeply to Naraku and the others. He knew in his heart that, if it weren't for Naraku and the two today, it would be another situation. "Thank you, Ninja-sama." At this time, the ordinary people in the caravan also bowed to express their gratitude after realizing that the crisis had been resolved. "Let's go on," Shizu waved and said, and then he and Naraku sat cross-legged on the shelf again. Seeing this, Jun Nakata didn't say anything else. After simply bandaging his wound, he called on everyone to continue setting off. This is the world of ninjas. Naraku sighed in his heart. The weak eat the strong, and the strong are respected. This is a world where force is respected. Just like when he killed Kawakami just now, the people in the Stone Ninja Village didn't even dare to mention it. This is the benefit of strong strength. There seems to be nothing wrong with this. He looked towards the distant east, where a golden sun was emitting a dazzling light, which illuminated the whole world. After solving the trouble in the Stone Ninja Village, the caravan's journey went smoothly. One day later, they arrived at the border of the kingdom of Wind Point. Naraku looked forward, and everywhere he looked was filled with yellow sand, which was no different from the desert in his previous life. With such a harsh environment, it's no wonder Sunagakure village is always thinking about starting a war. Naraku thought in his heart. When entering the kingdom of wind, Naraku found that the guards here were very weak, at least much weaker than those in the kingdom of Fire Point. According to his perception, there was only one Jounin guarding this area, and the others were all Chunin Point 4 ninjas of the level of Shizu and Kakashi. Such a guarding force is simply useless. Even he is sure that he can easily sneak into the kingdom of Wind Point, but then he felt relieved when he thought about Ichibi. For a ninja village, Jinchurik's affairs come first, especially Sunagakure village. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.